It is clear we are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's right. It wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver, because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that, yeah.
But she also revealed that she plied the Netflix exec. Hello, good morning to you. What a beautiful day as I came into London, the vista of the gorgeous capital skyline with this great, beautiful, big orange ball of fire rising above Westminster Bridge. It really was almost like a Turner painting. Seriously, it was absolutely stunning. Because the kids on their bikes with their machetes aren't up yet. Hurrah! So I got to enjoy London at its most beautiful, and I hope wherever you are that you can equally enjoy a gorgeous sunrise. Bit late for that. Sun's up, blinds down in here. That's right. Anyway, welcome to the show. I'm going to be with you for the next 4 hours to go over all of the weekend's news headlines, discuss all of the big stories from the week, and hopefully try and have a little bit of fun along the way, which is a bit difficult in our dystopian present, but there we go. Try we must, because if you don't laugh, guess what? You'll probably go and punch someone in the face, and I don't recommend that at all. Instead of doing that, why don't you let it all out with some communal catharsis, as I like to say. You don't need to wait 2 years on an NHS waiting list to see a shrink. No, you can dial this number for free. 0344 499 1000. I'm here to be like your political therapist, your agony Alex, if you will, to listen to all of your complaints and concerns about the modern age. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. All of this stuff is your normal network rate. Like I said, it's not like you have to pay anything for it. 0344 499 1000 is also the number if you'd like to send me a cheeky little WhatsApp, or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp, because I really like playing those out, especially at the weekend where I can hear your dulcet tones. If you're going to send a text message, by the way, you should know this by now if you're a regular listener. If you're going to send a text message, what do you need to do? That's right, you need to put the letters TALK, talk, before you then write the body of your text. That way, somehow, it sort of dodges all the intermittent signals coming from outer space, all of those orbs that are currently floating around airfields looking if nuclear weapons are on the move, and the rest of that space junk and little green men. All of those things do not intercept its passage if you write the word talk before your text, and it wends its way into the studios, which my amazing weekend editor has set up so beautifully this morning. Phil Dave is meticulous, can I just say, to a point. I actually took a photo of the display of paperwork and newspapers on my desk, all very carefully marked with time codes and spread out, and even the newspapers are sort of fanned like a hotel reception. And I sent it to my other producer, Dean, and said, listen, mate, you might buy me a full English every weekend, but you don't do this setup. So thank you to Phil Phil, Dave. Thank you to everybody else in the gallery looking after me today. And thank you to Mr. Charlie Rowley, former Conservative advisor, who is here to co-pilot HMS Common Sense, at least for the next hour. Good morning to you, Charlie.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, lovely to have you here. And, well, let's bring down the mood, because we all deserve to be a bit miserable this weekend and get angry about stuff, because this is Britain 2025. And without sort of sounding cynical and grotesque, here's a story that is right up my street, so to say, and unfortunately potentially down yours as well. It doesn't surprise me at all. A rape charge against a man staying in an asylum hotel was deliberately kept quiet. Guess what? Officials feared inflaming community tension. I'm fed up with... I'll tell you why. They don't trust the British public to handle this information. We know anyway what is going on. We're not idiots. And how dare they blame us for fanning community tensions? They're the ones doing this by bringing in all of these undocumented men from misogynistic countries. We don't know who they are. We don't know what connections they have. They're all there. You see the filming over in the camps in Calais. Why do you want to come to Britain? I want to come because I want a free hotel room. I want to come because I want to be given a house. There's a brilliant expose today in the Daily Mail where they've gone to Manston, that big sort of, you know, industrial farming centre of migrants. They get off the boat in Kent, they're all dragged down to Manston to have their fingerprints taken, X, Y and Z, before being dispersed around the country. And the whistleblowing from there, these men are turning up and they know they're being told abject lies. They know that some of them are wrong and have probably got convictions in other countries. And all they're saying is, when do we get our house? When do we get our hotel? When do we get our house? I mean, we're being absolutely mugged off. And then you get this, and I've been banging this drum for a long time. I'm sorry, but men from these countries where women are forced to dress like ghosts, where they're stoned, where they're not allowed out without an escort, and even if it's not that bad, even if you go to a moderate Muslim country, it ain't like they got Bonnie Blue, right? It's not the same as what you get in Britain. And you end up with this toxic combination. And guess what? These young men who have come over, hormones of age, seeing a bit of ankle for the first time in their life, being exposed to the hypersexualisation of pop culture in the West, sitting in a hotel day in, day out without any gainful employ. I wonder what's going to happen.
Well, I think that's a brilliant summary that everybody across the UK feels towards what's happening in the UK today. And how many more times, or how many conversations have you had where the law, it seems, whether it's the law, whether it's the media, whether it's council, which is always on the side of either a perpetrator or alleged perpetrator and not on the victims. The victims are always the people, always the group that get left behind or forgotten about or just been told to sort of, you know, shut up and go away, because we have to, you know, as is the case in this case, as it was under the Baroness Casey review, to not stoke community tensions, or don't say anything that might cause offence. Don't appear to be racist, because, you know, we can't talk about it.
Turn the other cheek when your women and girls are being sexually harassed and abused and stalked and followed and raped. Oh, just ignore that for the sake of diversity. F off.
Exactly. Well, and I think that, and that is...
She says at 8 minutes past 6 on Saturday morning.
But that is the what people wake up to every day, because they want to look, when people wake up, hard-working Brits wake up in the morning, they look at the newspapers, they see yet another individual that has come to the UK, that has got the free hotel, that has got the free TV licence, that has got front of the queue, whether it's whatever kind of benefits, that has turned up where you don't know whether they're what their name is, their age, where they claim that they might be a child when they look, you know, that they've got a nice beard.
They're coming on a Zimmer frame. I'm 16 years old.
You know, they clearly appear to be not as they state, but the process under the Home Office, a clearly failed system where people do get to come into the country, where they do get that accommodation at the expense of the taxpayer, where they do go on to commit heinous crimes, whether it's rape, whether it's sexual assault, whether it's part of a grooming gang scandal, whatever it is. But those people are protected, because if you dare speak about it, or anybody dare to sort of say, hold on a second, I think there's a group of men over there that look of Pakistani origin, I think some things are right. Oh gosh, no, you can't say that because you're a racist.
There's a load of migrants lurking around the school gates trying to chat up the girls. Oh well, you better not talk about that. It's sick. And finally now we're getting some empirical evidence. We're starting to get statistics which is making, you know, life a bit easier for people like me who've been shouting about this for about 2 years. I remember the first time a clip of mine went viral and the abuse I got. Oh, it's disgusting, saying that from born men are more likely to rape women. Guess what? They are. We found out in the Casey report there are asylum seekers involved in the grooming gangs. We know as well that about 25% of all rape cases that are being convicted are foreign-born males. OK, so, yeah, 75% are white people, but the point of it is this. That is not representative of the breakdown in our society, of the ratios when it comes to men from different cultures. We've also just learnt that 1 in 5 child abusers are foreign-born men. Why are we importing men? We know these countries are misogynistic. We know these men have medieval attitudes. We know because we turn around and go, oh, we better give them some foreign aid so they can have some sort of Amdram society about not raping people, you know, not spreading AIDS. Let's throw them a big charity check so they can, I don't know, put on some sort of mime play about HIV. You know, we know that they've got issues, social issues back in their own countries. So what do we think's going to happen if we suddenly import hundreds of thousands of these people into the country, that they're suddenly going to, I don't know, have this magical rebirth, have their brains completely blitzed and be regrown in the form of someone who has been born and bred in the United Kingdom with our culture, used to our mores? It's just, it's throwing women and girls under the bus. This is directly compromising the safety and the integrity. And even, you know, we often talk about this is, you know, a situation of someone being raped. And that's the sort of stuff that breaks into the public, although only about 1% of rapes are reported, so Lord knows how much else is going on out there. But what isn't being spoken about, which is harder to quantify, are the number of creepy foreign men who leer at you in the street, who follow you down the road, who are lurking around outside of school gates, who are creating an intimidating, uncomfortable presence, especially for wee little teenage girls.
And that's exactly what is happening day in, day out. And the fear of, having that as an experience, but also the difficulty of them reporting that. And as you say, you know, it is difficult enough to report a rape or a sexual assault anyway, because of the way that the police attitudes have been, or because of the lack of following it up. And indeed, as Baroness Casey exposed, where young girls below the age of 16, so we're talking about 13, 14, 15, were described as prostitutes, or girls that were blamed for being in love, in inverted commas, with the perpetrator.
With some gnarly old man with a beard like, you know,
and therefore
Brian Blessed.
Exactly.
And, I mean, come on.
And therefore the fault and the blame lies with the victim, as they so obviously are, but obviously not obvious to the people that were responsible for reporting and for actually following up the report in the first place, which is why it was so obvious, it seems to me, to have a national inquiry in the first place. And why on earth the government didn't go down that route, why on earth they thought just local inquiries would be okay.
Oh, and then blocked the one local authority that wanted to hold an inquiry. Something suggests to me, and maybe I need to put on my tinfoil hat, it fits oh so well at this time of day, something suggests to me that the Labour Party really don't want this national inquiry, that they're scared about what's about to fall out of the closet. And I would imagine that the parameters of that inquiry, of that inquiry are going to be very narrow indeed, to try and avoid embarrassment and exposures of people potentially connected to their own.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think when you find, look, you know, Dominic Cummings, you know, said earlier on in the week when he was, you might know Dominic Cummings, people might have heard of him.
I think everyone's heard of old Dom, haven't they? The Mekon.
The Mekon. And, you know, when he was just a lowly special advisor in the Department for Education, this would have been about 2010, 11, 12, when Michael Gove was the Education Secretary, and Michael obviously, you know, backed up largely what Dominic was saying, was that Rotherham Council wanted to have a judicial review on a Times journalist, Andrew Norfolk, that wanted to write about this, the grooming gang scandal, back in 2011. Now, the council wanted to block that reporting and officials in the Department for Education basically asked Michael Gove to support them in blocking the reporting, to which he said, no, because if there's something to expose, let's hear about it. That's the kind of chap that he was.
Could you imagine in any other country this ever being allowed to happen? I mean, this is, I called it the other day sexual genocide, because it's a deliberate targeting of young white girls by Muslim men Muslim men, right? I'm fed up with people going, British Southeast Asians, British Pakistanis. They're still dodging the M word because that fundamentally is the common denominator here. It's the attitudes of certain men who are adherents to a certain religion towards women who are not of that faith. And until we actually have that conversation in the open air, nothing is going to be done. That's still being swept under the carpet. And I cannot imagine in any other country, or if this situation was reversed, if we found up and down the country there were white male grooming gangs deliberately targeting black girls or deliberately targeting Asian girls, there would be the biggest outcry. There would be protests in the street. There'd be the taking of knees. There would be, I mean, banners and the Socialist Workers' Party and, you know, every single leftist judge out there and politicians wearing little badges, and there'll be Twitter ribbons and memes and, you know, things to put in your profile and allyship and, you know, there would be everything. The whole world would be chucking activism into the mix if these roles were reversed.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And just to even, you know, go back to basics, if you or I or anyone else, or if we were on holiday or if we were visiting another country where actually the norm or the custom was, if you were visiting any kind of religious or any kind of environment, but the requirement was in a foreign country, as a foreigner that was visiting on holiday, required you to wear some sort of head scarf, or if it required me to take off my shoes or whatever, you would do it because you are a guest in a foreign country. You are going to see a foreign land. You abide by the rules and customs because you want to integrate. You do it naturally. You do it willingly. We would do that, I think, largely as Brits, out of respect for a foreign country that we are the visitors or the guests of, and want to be integrated and want to learn more about. That's just who we are. So to take that, as you say, the roles reversed, people that come into the UK that all of a sudden feel that actually Western laws, Western democracy, civilisation of the West, it should not be adhered to. And by the way, we can speak our own language that doesn't have to be English, or we can have our own Sharia law
dress our women
that
up
takes
like
place,
pillar boxes.
or we can continue to
But it's worse than that. It's not just about not culturally adapting. It's specifically targeting and raping the little girls of that nation.
And
I think, and this is something that I don't think spoken about enough, I think a significant number of the men getting in those boats coming over here, part of the pull is the sexual liberty. I have seen TikTok videos that the traffickers are using to recruit their customers. I have seen them suggesting that you go to Britain and it's land of plenty with the way that women are on a night out. And I think as well, I'm pretty certain, so when I walk around, you know, I've lived in plenty of different countries abroad. I visit Morocco a lot. I'll tell you what, if you've got blonde hair, it's like flies to flypaper. They follow you because there's a fetishization of blonde-haired women, of the Western European look. And I think when you think, you know, these migrant men, like, where do you want to go to? I want to go to Sweden, I want to go to Denmark, I want to go to Germany, I want to go to England. I think they want to go because they quite want to, you know, enjoy you know, women that they think are below them, that are animals that can be taken as sex slaves, and have a jolly good time. I think we need to talk about this, you know, cultural phenomenon, frankly. And unless we can have this conversation, there's no point going, well, we need a national inquiry, and, you know, we need to know the ethnic breakdown of how many men are... We know. We know. Why are we trying to circumlocute all the time instead of turning around and going, guess what? Men from Pakistan are probably going to want to target little white schoolgirls. Well,
and when you take data from those that are arrested and prosecuted, when there is the lack of data, which obviously Baroness Casey was part of her quick and short and frank and right review that was concluded, where the data is missing, bet your bottom dollar, the data that's missing is not from, you know, white Caucasian British men.
We didn't record the ethnicity. Yes. Oh, right. Is that because you're being sensitive?
Or someone that's not prepared to give you there. I mean, you know, if you're more likely to give it if you are, as I say, somebody that is from the UK. But to go back to your earlier point, you're absolutely right. But if you can't get the former or the basics of just adhering to social norms and Western democracy, if you're coming into the UK, if you can't get the basics of just adhering to values, speaking the language, obeying by the law, if you can't get that right, then of course, and all the while being told, well, if you challenge somebody for not trying to integrate, oh, then you're far right, or you're part of the far right bandwagon.
You're a monster.
Then of course that exacerbates the problem and allows then the very perverse, disgusting, cruel and violent attacks that takes place that we've seen, but that is allowed to happen because if you dare challenge just the very basics of integration, then of course you shut up and you can't think. You think to yourself, well, I can't say anything, or I can't raise a concern because I'll be branded a part of a far right bandwagon, or I'll be branded racist. And for too long, people have been forced to not speak up. They have been told that they're wrong, that they are far right or whatever, that they can't raise these concerns, while these terrible, terrible crimes, and they are crimes, have been able to be committed. Now, all of a sudden, people that might have been former council leaders in particular areas where this did take place, that said at the time to a previous government, no need for a national inquiry or no need for a local inquiry. Nothing to see here. Now saying, oh, thank God there's a national inquiry.
Oh yeah, we always wanted this. We welcomed this in the beginning. My bad, did you?
Exactly.
Everyone's been part of the cover-up at the expense of some of the most disgusting, despicable, evil treatment of our little girls. It makes no sense. Right, now, if you want to join the conversation, the number is 03444991000. You can dial that up any old time and register your interest to be patched through to the studio. It's your standard network rate. You can also send me a WhatsApp using that number or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number if you'd like to text me. Let's do a few messages before we hit up the commercials. This is one we should talk about in a bit. It makes me feel sick that Keir says an 8-month-old baby can be aborted. Yeah, we need to talk about that one. Morning, Alex. Love your show. My birthday today. Happy birthday to you, Dee. Opening my presents in your company with a nice cup of tea. Keep up the good work for us all. You are our voice. Well, happy birthday. Let's talk about rape. That's quite dark, isn't it? But, you know, it's sort of an interesting circumstance to be like, woohoo, go Dee. Have a great day. And let's talk about grooming gangs. But there you are. That is a juxtaposition of some sort. Morning, Alex. We all know there is no appetite in government, be it Tory or Labour, to sort this problem out. Too many human rights lawyers making a fortune out of this sick trade. I reckon if there was a little expose done, you would find that certain immigration lawyers are probably in hock with the people traffickers. I do not imagine for 1 minute that this system is like two separate commodities. I would imagine there are immigration lawyers who actually know the people putting people into boats. Anyway, that's a side thought. Without doubt, we are the laughing stock of Europe. And why is a pensioner in a week's time having to pay my money to house and feed this scourge of criminals, says Steve in Ipswich. Right. You've got the numbers on the screen there if you want to get in touch. Unfortunately, people do have to pay my meagre salary, so you're going to have to watch a few commercials now, but I'll see you on the other side.
After a couple of Chardonnays, he's even more robust. But,
is he?
Yeah, he is. But there's a story there, but I won't tell that one on air. But I'll tell you right now, like, they took this seriously, and what they weren't scared of was a kind of left-wing Guardian-esque narrative building up about them. They stopped caring about that. Our British establishment is terrified of looking like the bad guy, and that's the real difference between Australia and here, and how they've actually approached it. Is when they want to take it as a kind of crime and law and order issue, Australia actually did. And that's the point. Is they say we're now going to enforce the laws.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's right. It wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practicing to be a Deliveroo driver because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that. Yeah.
She also revealed that she plied the Netflix executive.
Hello, welcome back to the show now. I've got joined by the wonderful Charlie Rowley, who once upon a time worked for Mr. Michael Gove. And there's one thing in Mr. Michael Gove's record that I think is worth praising. Maybe there are more. But one particular thing stands out, and it reminds me, it puts me in mind of this story today, which is that Palestine Action, now that is the organisation which broke into RAF Brize-Norton, sprayed red paint into aircraft engines. They are going to be prescribed as a terrorist organisation. Now, people might be, that's a bit ridiculous, that's a bit heavy-handed. But going back to Mr. Michael Gove, I remember he produced a report looking at a lot of these Muslim charities who are there doing the interlocution with the police. This is how you should treat the Muslim community, going into schools, helping to write the curriculum, advising local government, advising the civil service, you know, all these wonderful community leaders. And it turns out a lot of them are pretty dodgy, with dodgy connections abroad, with foreign funding, with affiliations to things like the Muslim Brotherhood. And it was Michael Gove who actually created a list of organisations that he thought really should be banned from having public roles. And I'm pleased to see that this has happened. Prescription means Palestine Action's assets and money can be seized. Now, the thing is, we knew years ago, about 2 years ago, when the pro-Palestine marches first started, we knew that they would have had connections to very dodgy terror groups. And nothing was done. Week after week, they've been allowed to parade the streets. Why?
Well, I think that is the absolute key question, is how has an organisation been able to take to the streets weekend after weekend, halt traffic, put up signs to say, you know, conscribe, if that's a word, Hamas, as it were, as a terrorist organisation. Which, so Hamas is obviously a prescribed terrorist.
Deproscribed.
So, you know, basically,
well, they walk
Hamas
around going intifada and from the river to the sea. They basically openly tell everybody they want to destroy Israel. It's
exactly.
Like, come on.
You know, the ability to be able to project that onto the Houses of Parliament, which is what they did. You know, and now all of a sudden it's almost as if, oh gosh, you know, when you see two people from Palestine Action break into an RAF base, not any old RAF base, where planes are used and stored that carry government ministers, that carry the royal family, that have been used obviously for missions in the past. It is not a small town army cadet, you know, voluntary, you know, base. It is an average Joe that might use it. It is operational, and people just hop in on an e-scooter of some kind or a bike.
Weren't these planes sort of lined up to potentially go and be part of supporting service over in the Middle East? Now, we don't know what that service was going to be. They could be aiding jets which are going to intercept missiles headed towards civilian targets. And yeah, I mean, Sir Keir Starmer's found himself in a little bit of an embarrassing situation, hasn't he? Because he's turned around, prescribed Palestine Action, good, correct move. But it turns out that when he was a barrister, human rights barrister, amongst some of his other less choice customers, he actually defended a protester who broke into an RAF base to set fire to an aircraft in protest at the Iraq War. And he actually basically won the case by saying, well, because he wanted to stop a plane going to war, it's okay. Huh?
Well, exactly. And this is the guy that has, you know, staked his whole credentials of being the Prime Minister on the back of being the former... Did you know he was the former Director of Public Prosecutions?
I did not know
Had you heard that one?
No.
He hasn't said it enough, I don't think.
No, I didn't realise that.
But, you know, the kind of people and clients, not just him, but his Attorney General that has
oh my God, that guy, Lord Hermer.
Lord Hermer. All the characters that have been let off on his part. It is just shameless. And you're absolutely right, you know, Palestine Action as what it should be now, a prescribed terrorist organisation on the back of all the others, like the Muslim Brotherhood, things that Michael gave, as you say, pulled out as people who have been absolutely the forefront of creating chaos that again, the things like the Prevent programme as well, you know, where there was all this pussyfooting around about the Prevent programme not able to go after the people that it should, because there was an imbalance, or seemed to be the perception of an imbalance, that you've got to go after people who might be Islamist extremists, but don't just go after the Islamist
you've got to go after the far
You've got
right.
to go and find
The mythical
white
far right.
the far right, because it seemed to be a racist or prejudiced. It is ridiculous. So for too long, the state, institutions, the people, and the very institutions that are there to protect us as citizens have failed us all. And it has taken, Baroness Casey, just on the rape gang sort of stuff, as one thing, but this has blown the doors off, I think, of Whitehall. It's blown the doors of the state in general. The cover-ups, the shuffling of papers, the moving, you know, parcel to parcel of responsibility, nothing to see here, or no, don't question me because, you know, we're the state and we know best. It is absolute baloney.
It makes you wonder, because I think the Labour Party in very hot water over this. You know, a lot of these rape gangs were operating in Muslim-held Labour-held areas with big Muslim populations. I think that the Labour Party could be in for a massive, massive embarrassment, and it does make you wonder. I wonder why that human rights and former head of public prosecutions was accelerated so quickly up the ranks of the Labour Party to become its leader. Very convenient appointment, it seems now, considering the amount of hot water they could potentially find themselves in. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to be, you know, hyperbolic. I seriously do think the Labour Party are going to be in big trouble if that national inquiry does what it needs to do, and that's going to be the big question. Is it going to? We're going to pick up on this topic again a little bit later, but before you go and put the kettle on and I enjoy my little cup of tea here that lovely Tommy has just brought in for me, I'm going to tell you about how you can win tickets to not just a brilliant gig, but possibly the gig of the decade, because it's competition time. We're going to be giving you the chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets, not in any old place, oh no, but in Manchester itself on July the 19th. We're also going to put you up in a hotel and give you £5,000 to spend while you're at it. Here's everything you need to know.
Alright, kid, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland, for a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5,000 spending money. All you gotta do is text the word WIN to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's where it wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that, yeah.
But she also revealed that she plied the Netflix exec.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Let's do some of your messages now, shall we? I've been rather remiss at getting through these. Sean from God's own city of Gloucester. The best people are born there, did you know? Including me and Sir Chris Whitty. Yeah, did you know that? Sir Chris Whitty. Yeah, he's from Gloucester. Good morning, Alex. Like a lot of people, I'm both genuinely worried for this country and absolutely incandescent with rage about what has been forced on us by the ideologues that have been in power, all started by Blair. Keith Stalin and his cronies have supercharged this. A backlash is coming and the lying Labour Party will be wiped out. I saw some absolutely jaw-dropping polling online the other day, and I don't know if it's, like, you know, true or not, because sometimes you see some jaw-dropping polling on X and you think, really? And it was on an account called Stats for Lefties, which makes me sort of question its credibility. If you're listening from Stats for Lefties and you're annoyed that I'm questioning your credibility, do please get in touch and explain who you are and how you gathered your data, your modus operandi. But anyway, these stats were basically showing the Labour Party being decimated, the Conservative Party being decimated, for basically filling the entirety of the House of Commons. And the more you have stories coming out about the concealment of rapists from migrant hotels, the Casey report, that national inquiry, it's becoming, to me, a more plausible picture.
Well, I think that's right. And I think, look, you know, people are coming round to the idea that, look, the Tories had 14 years in government. I wouldn't go as far to say that all of those 14 years were terrible, because, you know, the general public...
Which year was good?
Well, the general public had about 4 opportunities, I think, to vote out.
I think the thing is, now we know what terrible really looks like.
And now, exactly. But part of the problem and part of the failing is obviously, you know, when you chop and change your Prime Minister because of your own infighting and self-indulgent, you end up chopping and changing your Home Secretary about 7 or 8 times, which means that things, very important issues, like the ones that we've been talking about, fall through the cracks. And of course, the Tories have got to own part of the responsibility for that. But now they voted for a new government on a very, very thin turnout. Jeremy Corbyn got more votes in 2017 and 19 compared to this government, but because of the turnout.
Corbyn had got him?
Well, you know, there'll be some people on the left of the Labour Party thinking, you know, actually maybe he should have done. But,
maybe
you know,
better than
exactly. And so people are seeing that, gosh, under this government, we thought things couldn't get any worse, and I would argue, and I think lots of people might say that they have, but they're not obviously going to run back to the Tories. I don't think that's a prospect at this stage.
Do you think there's anything the Tories can do? Because, you know, people go, well, they'll get rid of Badenoch and they'll bring Jenrick in. And I'm like, I still don't think it's going to work, because you can't really... You know, Nigel Farage has got so much hinterland in campaigning for sorting out borders, campaigning about defending our culture, campaigning about the risk of mass immigration, that he's been synonymous with it. He's lived 20 years with being called a racist, a xenophobe, a monster, a danger, that now turning around and pretending to be him just seems like, well, what it is, shallow synthetic imitation.
No, I think that's right. I mean, look, the fact is, for the Tories, and however difficult, and the reason why it will be so difficult is because even if they had all of the answers, it could be Kemi Badenoch as leader, it could be Robert Jenrick as the leader, it could be someone completely unheard of, unknown as leader, it could be Boris Johnson that comes back, it could be David Cameron that comes back. He came back as Foreign Secretary, he came back as, you know, or anyone could be the leader of the Tory party is basically what I'm trying to say. And they could have all of the answers to all of the problems, and they might be the right ones. But the reality is you cannot get off the charge that you had 14 years or you had your time, and why did, you know, you might have the answer. But you were in power and you didn't do it. So the trust won't be there, whoever is the leader, I'm afraid, I think, for the next few years. So the public will not listen to the Tories. They might want to give them a bit of a hearing as things go on, but certainly not now. I do think Kemi is right, by the way, when I think... You know,
out-Farage the Farage.
And you can't out-Farage. And when the centre ground shifts, I don't necessarily think that because people have had long-held views, that means that they've been right all of the time. I think, you know, because I think there are other things that might exacerbate a problem, which means that the centre ground shifts towards what the issues are of the day. So I don't think, for example, you know, I mean, we are talking day in, day out about the small boat crossings and illegal migration. We weren't having that kind of conversation, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, because it wasn't necessarily seen as
to the same volume.
To the same extent. So, but now it is, and it's been vastly exposed, and I think that's quite rightly people are outraged about it, and they're going to the people, they're going to a party that is able to deal with it, or has been talking about it for a long time, and that's why Reform are very popular. And you know, Nigel Farage is doing incredibly well, and being the, I think at the moment, the best political communicator there is out there.
He has been for a while, hasn't he? Though, to be honest, he's the only one who speaks human.
Well, exactly. You know, he's someone who is able to articulate without fear or favour the issues of the country.
He said to me the other day, he said, "I've never been a populist. I've always been an unpopulist," and that's quite right. Actually, he's always been the vanguard, of that Overton window. Overton window is going to be the OED's phrase of the year, isn't it? Like it was Orwellian a couple of years ago. It's Overton window this year. Brian says, morning Alex, morning Charlie. When Reform get into power, they're going to have one hell of a mess to clear up after this lot are done, doing their best to ruin this country. I don't know of any other country that would put up with this. What is going on here? I just don't get it. Let's speak now to Steve, who is in Leeds. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Alex. How are you?
I'm all right, my darling. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a different voice I'm used to hearing now that David's gone off to his reform job.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to David. I get to, for now anyway, sit in his vacated throne, and it is a privilege indeed.
Well, hopefully you get to stay there all the time. Anyway, my point is just a couple of quick points on the grooming gangs. I think the remit of the grooming gang inquiry should be expanded, and that we should ask ourselves and call forward those leaders of the Muslim community that sit there at the moment in deathly silence and don't speak out and say, this is not our religion, this is not in our name. Lord Ali, Sadiq Khan, those MPs that got voted in on the back of being pro-Palestinian Parliament, not one of them has stood up and said, not in my name.
Yeah, did you know what? You make a really fascinating point there. I'm going to tread around this gently, because there are things I really want to say right now that I'm just going to sort of keep locked away for the time being until I figure out how best to express them. But it is true, time and time again, the Muslim community could try and address us directly. They could say, we apologise for what has happened, that we realise that there are problems, we understand that there are men who have abused, tormented, hurt, raped your girls, and it's the most despicable thing that's ever happened. They could address us, but they don't. And particularly Sadiq Khan, when Susan Hall, you must know that clip. Oh yeah, Charlie's nodding.
Exactly, yes, yeah, exactly.
Actually, guys, if that's in the archive somewhere for a future hour, let's dig that out. I don't know if it is, but there's this amazing clip of mayoral question time, where Susan Hall is basically saying to him, because you're also head of your police and crime commissioner as London mayor, what are you doing to mitigate the risk to girls in London from grooming gangs? Because of course this is one of the most diverse cities in the UK. There are certain boroughs which are predominantly Muslim. You have to ask yourself, is it happening here? If it's happening in the rest of the country, one assumes it is. And Sadiq Khan's response, what are you talking about? You better explain what you mean. It was so arrogant, it was bullying, it was nasty, it was trying to make her feel uncomfortable about bringing up the topic that you have British Pakistani men raping, targeting young white girls. And as a British Pakistani man, instead of saying you're absolutely right, we must work cross-party on this to make sure girls are protected, no, he was nasty, he was spiteful, he was rude, he was arrogant, he was prickly. That spoke volumes.
Absolutely. I hope there is that clip that can be played, because anybody that wants to go back and look at that, they absolutely should, because what Susan Hall fell victim of during that question is that she felt, because of the pressure of the left and being the fear of being branded far right or a crackpot or a loon or racist or whatever, she didn't directly ask Sadiq Khan, do we have the same problem of Pakistani grooming gangs in London as we've seen across the country? She didn't feel able, because of the hostility, to say the word Pakistani grooming gangs. Yeah. She asked the mayor, do we have the same kind of grooming gangs in London as you've seen across the country? And the mayor knew exactly what he was doing, Sadiq Khan, and he belittled Susan, and to say, I don't understand the question. Can you
go on, put it in different words. I dare you. It was like I challenge you to say to me, as a Pakistani man, that Pakistani men are raping white girls. And she should have blimmin' well done it.
And had
she should have said, you're a Pakistani man, you're mayor of London, this is atrocity happening up and down the country, our girls deserve protecting, I want answers now, don't play games, don't try and intimidate. How dare you? When it's the integrity of our girls, when it's the safety of our daughters, how dare you play that race card, you despicable little weasel of a horrible cretin.
And nobody could put it in better terms than what you've just said out there, Alex, because I wish, like you, that actually Susan Hall had said, what I'm talking about, Mr. Mayor, is Pakistani men and part of grooming gangs in London like we've seen across the country. Because what the mayor would have done, no doubt, in my humble opinion, would have been to say, how dare you, Susan Hall, talk about Pakistani men or the Pakistani community? How dare you single them out? You are just part of this far-right establishment, conservative, ... And I wish he had said that, because on the back of what we know now to be true, and what Susan knew at the time, and what we all knew at the time, but probably weren't able... We've always known, but haven't been able to say, that clip would have been exactly the example that everybody would be able to point at to say that mayor, Mr. Mayor Sadiq Khan, Sir Sadiq, in inverted commas, would have been the absolute example of what is so wrong within our society, and why the left have vilified and played politics about this issue, just to sort of talk down anybody that's raised a question about this. That would have been, I think, perfect. But obviously, Susan didn't feel the need to say it, and the mayor, as you said, totally belittled her, ignored her, made her feel uncomfortable by trying to play on the language and say, oh, I don't know what I mean. Can you express it again? I really don't understand what you're talking. And it was very uncomfortable viewing. But now we know, and we know what that clip means. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. And I hope people do go and watch that.
We'll see if we can dig it. I don't know if it is in our archives. And sorry, they were looking at me through the glass of the gallery. Oh, yes, Phil Dave's giving me a little wig. We got it. We're on it. We're going to see if we can dig that out, because it is shocking. It sends chills down your spine. Steve, thank you ever so much for your call. Should we have a little voice note now from Daryl?
I believe that if this doesn't get stopped soon, there is going to be something big happening in the country. We are a very tolerant nation, but we can only get pushed so far. I believe that they have to stop the boats crossing. To stop the boats crossing, you need to take away the benefits. Take away all the benefits, put them in tented areas in Manston, not buildings. They can have 3 square meals a day, and that's it until they get put on a C-130 and sent back to wherever they came from.
Did you hear in the background it was the ghost of Charlie Past? Because I think Daryl still had his radio on while he was leaving the voice note, so I could hear you. It's like, it's like a sort of interesting feedback loop. If you are going to leave us a voice note, turn down your radio, as much as we're listening to ourselves back, because we're glorious. But he is right. In any other country, if you cross over that border illegally, if you break in, you got 6 months in prison, 9 months in prison, in a deportation centre. In some of them, you're shot. You're shot. Now, I'm not advocating we have people lined up on the white cliffs of Dover with, boats trained in their crosshairs. I am not a monster. But what I'm saying is most other countries regard the protection of their frontiers as absolutely central to their existence, to their defence, to their right to preserve their nationhood. And in this country, we're like, oh, do you want a hotel? Do you want some pocket money? There was a tweet yesterday, I saw it online by Zia Youssef, who, former chairman of Reform, now heading up Doge. And it was one of his Dogers out doing audits in councils that are now Reform-led. And he'd screen grabbed one of the WhatsApps he'd got from his team. And someone in his team said, something along the lines of, these asylum seekers are living a better life than me, man.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
So that's just what people feel, and because they see it. Why is it the case that we can move heaven and earth, it seems, to house people come into the country illegally, whilst they wait for 2-3 years maybe to be processed? When you have people that have served this country, veterans, people that have put their lives on the line to defend them, we have to say, but they are sleeping rough.
France is a signatory to the ECHR. France is a member of the EU. On a clear day, you can see Calais from Dover. In fact, if you're charity-minded, you can actually swim that channel. It's blimmin' close. And on one side of that strait, which is, 12 miles at its closest, on one side of that strait, they're in makeshift camps, where the climate is pretty much identical to ours in Kent. On the side, they live in makeshift camps, and that's fine. That's not a breach of human rights. And yet the minute they cross that little strait of water, they get a hotel. They get a house. Yes, we can put them in makeshift camps. We ought to. And frankly speaking, this idea, I hate the idea of them being dispersed around the community. I think that is so dangerous. Putting these multiple occupancy, lots of young men to one place, down, you know, the streets of usually the poorest neighbourhoods, where often young girls are the most vulnerable. That, I think, is even worse than the hotels, even if it saves money. But with the hotels, why are they allowed to go out and about, walk around, bring visitors, go work for Uber and Deliveroo? They should be somewhere under lock and key. They should be in detention.
Well, and especially when we know the Home Office, for the people that have arrived in the past, not even just those that have come in the last 2 or 3 years, for example, but the Home Office have not got a handle on numbers of people that have come to this country previously. They don't know where they are. So the idea that you can trust or think that it's okay to then, as you say, disperse people around the country, I think that's for the birds. But it goes back to that, you're absolutely right, that previous voice note, that it's the, you know, why don't people stay in France? Or why, if you've travelled through all across Europe, you might have come through the Med, you might have come through Italy, into Spain, you know, all the way through to France, then Dover, it's because of the pull factor.
They want the free hotel. It's the first thing they ask for. We got to go to a break now, but don't go anywhere because we're back just after this.
Well, it is, and I thought Diane Abbott actually made a very powerful intervention today. That's a phrase I've never used.
Oh, hang on, Robert. No, sorry, we've booked the wrong guest, guys.
You've got the wrong
Robert's
guest.
gone mad. He's citing wisdom from Diane Abbott.
Not for the first time, gone a bit mad in my case. But she is against this, and what she said was that she wouldn't want to put, and I quote, her life in the hands of a panel. Yeah. And we can add to that a government-sponsored panel.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's right. It wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that. Yeah.
She also revealed that she plied the Netflix executive.
Welcome back. Wow, we're letting off some steam. Let's do some messages now. Louise from Ipswich says, good morning. Where are the feminists? Workmen calling out a cheery hello, darling, and giving a wolf whistle to adult women were considered despicable by the feminists. Where is their faux outrage about these disgusting men raping and worse, very young girls? I don't get it. I mean, feminist became a dirty word because all they did was moan about the patriarchy. Jess Phillips is one of the worst of this. I mean, how repugnant and awful and cocky and venal has she come across when being asked about these inquiries? I mean, I've never seen a woman look so much on the back foot and yet address every single interview with such arrogance. But she's always on going, it's men, they're all misogynist, it's men. I mean, she is just a man-hater.
Well, I think Jess Phillips will have a lot to answer for when all of this sort of stuff comes out. And someone who went on, I think, national television only the other night to say that she's never, when asked, have you ever turned a blind eye? She said, absolutely not, never. Well, you were, by the way, you know, just, you know...
Mate, you're safeguarding minister.
Sorry, just, you know...
And you told Oldham not to have their inquiry.
Exactly.
You started all this.
You were the one that you have rejected the calls for a national inquiry. How can you go on national television and say, oh, I've never turned a blind eye? You prevented and stopped an inquiry taking place on a national level, despite knowing the scandal. You've been captured at the very, best, and being polite about it, she's been captured by the Home Office. I don't think that's actually part of it. I just think she is totally inept and incompetent as a minister.
I don't think they're just inept. I think that there are probably some pretty tawdry connections that could be established through some of these inquiries. And I'm not saying against her personally, but I think that, like I said, a lot of these atrocities took place in Labour councils. So not in Labour councils, but Labour, where Labour controls the council in that particular area. So I do wonder what could be exposed. The thing is, it ain't going to be. The political class knows how to protect itself. It always has. I hope to see prosecutions. I want to see prosecutions of local politicians who knew what was going on, who might have been part of a cover-up. Morning, Alex and Charlie. I'm just wondering if it's actually worth banning this group, Palestine Action, whatever it's called, because whilst I'm all for it, I've heard that all they'll do is change their name to Action for Palestine and they are legal again. It seems ridiculous if this is true. I don't know if that is true or not, but probably. Bit of, you know, brush off the nomenclature and reform, and there you go.
Well,
funnel your foreign funding into another entity.
Yes, well, it wouldn't surprise you, would it, with the state of our law sometimes and the loopholes that people can create. But you would hope that once it's been prescribed, you can seize the assets immediately before they even change. And the National Crime Agency, you would hope, or whoever is following this group of individuals that would be part of Palestine, whatever evolution they might sort of progress onto, or whatever new name change or whatever, they would be followed just as else.
Did you see that staggering leaked security report in France that Le Figaro had, where basically, I think it sort of comes from French intelligence briefing, someone who had been asked to write a report, a la Casey, but it was all about the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood in France, and it expressly laid out how Islamist organisations use NGOs. They form these sort of so-called charities or action groups. They use the guise of something like what is going on in Gaza to actually push for Islamist policies, to gain leverage with inside organisations, to make sure that they are the ones briefing the Home Office about this is how you interact with the Muslim community, to carve a little, bit of territory out for the interests of the Ummah. And you know that this is taking place in the United Kingdom. And time and again, everyone falls for it. They bend over backwards in the Department of Education. They've got their own sort of Muslim, employees in the Home Office. All these public-facing institutions have bent over backwards.
Totally. And, the idea that we're reading stories only last month, I think, about Sharia courts that take place within our prisons. So these are people who are banged to rights because of, whatever God knows crimes that they've committed that makes them, warrants them to be behind bars, obviously all crimes clearly. But the idea that there is a wing of a prison that is overrun, operated, overseen by a group of Muslim men who have their own policies, they have their own laws, courts, and that's why we saw the attacker, who I think, if I'm right, was linked to the Southport killings, who went on to attack prison guards with the butter.
Oh, was it the brother
melted
of the,
butter, the brother of
Ariana Grande bomber?
At the Manchester bar. You're absolutely right. Because prisoners can get away with it because of a particular religion or a particular subsect of society. Because, again, if you call it out or say, I've got a group of Muslim men here or a group of Pakistani men over there or a group of whoever you are, but I can't dare talk about it because there's a minority ethnic group or any kind of ethnicity involved. I dare not speak about it because I'll be branded a racist or far right or whatever. Oh, that's too much of a bother for me. I better not say anything and just hope the problem goes away. The problem doesn't go away. It exacerbates. It is fueled. It comes back 10 times stronger, and that's when you see the problems that we're seeing in our society today.
And yet what sends a real chill down my spine is in the midst of all of this happening, that report about the rape gangs, what we knew about the cover-up of Southport, the migratory flows into this country from people from parts of the world where, quite frankly, we should probably have a travel ban. In the midst of all of this, the Labour Party are deciding now is the time to push for the law on Islamophobia, all headed up by that former disgusting Conservative, that rancorous, rat-faced Remainer, Dominic Grieve. I detest man. How dangerous this is going to be.
Well, yes, trying to come up with a legal definition of Islamophobia means that actually, had anybody questioned a particular group of people, whether it was Pakistani grooming gangs or any kind of anyone, of a religion, or from the Muslim faith, you could be then branded Islamophobic. You, as someone that's trying to call out things that are going wrong in your society or your community because something doesn't look right or clearly isn't right, whether it's FGM, whether it's marrying your first cousin, second cousin, whatever goes on in certain sections of our society. The idea that you call that out and say that's not right. Oh, hold on, no, you're being Islamophobic. It would be you, as the person that's calling it out, you would be the one that's banged up like poor old Lucy Letby for 31 months.
It's such a ridiculous concept, Islamophobia, because phobia is what is used when it's an irrational fear, right? When there's nothing to be scared of. There is a lot to be scared of about Islamism in this country. We've seen it. We've seen the rape gangs, terror attacks. It's not exact. You don't have to be a genius to realise why people are so frightened of the expansion of Islamism in this nation. Susan's message saying, Alex Phillips for Home Secretary, please. Absolutely not. I'm sorry. That's a poison chalice. That's a job I'd never do. Not even for £1 million. Culture Secretary, however. I reckon that's a better way to be subversive and really change the country. But I ain't taken the poison chalice of Home Secretary ever in my life. I wouldn't dare. Anyway, ladies and gents, thank you ever so much for keeping me company for the first hour of the show. We're going to take a short ad break now, and Charlie and I are going to be back to talk about, some other big stories that have been making the news. Do stay tuned. I'm with you all the way through until 10 a.m. Put the kettle on, and I'll see you on the other side of these commercials. Back in just a moment.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament. To respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you're
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's right. It wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver, because that'll be his next job.
He'd be good at that, yeah.
She also revealed that she plied the Netflix exec.
Good morning to you, Alex Phillips, with you all the way through till 10 o'clock. We've flown through that first hour. Where did the time go?
Time flies when you're having, well...
When you're having a rant.
Rant.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So there's your first hour of therapy, ladies and gentlemen. You have 3 more, courtesy of the Home of Common Sense talk. A few messages now. Anna in Surrey says, this is proper journalism. Well, it's proper ranting, that's for sure. This is why I listen to talk. A woman daring to speak for the silenced millions of women and little girls. If you ever want to run for mayor, I'm your span in waiting. Again, no. Not Home Secretary, definitely not Mayor of London. At this stage, I might just build a wall around London and let it go. You know, let's preserve the rest of Britain. It's too far gone in the capital. Absolute poison chalice. Now, morning, Alex and Charlie. For illegal migrants and grooming gang rapists, we should bring back hanging. Well, strong sentiments at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Starmer is a weak, pathetic android of a man, if you can call him a man. I'm glad my children are grown up. The thing that really makes me sick and is the worst crime a person can commit is raping a woman or children. For that, we should bring back hanging. Mick from Barnsley. Have a great day, guys. Now, I disagree there, because unfortunately, and you know, I hate saying it, very hard to prove rape. And I was out for drinks with a Met Police detective the other day, and I asked him about this. He had a big black eye because he'd been kneed in the face because he was arresting someone who had committed a sex crime, and so he turned up for drinks with like a good old shiner. Very heroic. And I asked him about this, and he said, yeah, poor guy. You know, he said as part of the arrest you have to sort of feel around the socks and make sure there are no weapons. And he sort of jerked his knee and it whacked him in the face. And he went, poor guy. I said, poor guy, he's a sex offender. He said, I really don't think he is, because there's this batty woman who keeps reporting people. And I said, does that happen often? He said, yeah, you'd be surprised, actually, how many women actually invent stuff like this. So you cannot... For that reason, you cannot bring back hanging. Yes. But, you know, and to be honest, I don't believe in capital punishment. But sometimes it does, you know, certain incidents do test that theory of mine.
Yes, and I know I totally understand the sentiment, but I just err on the side of, look, you know, if you are guilty, and if you're found guilty, then you should spend the rest of your days in a cell, effectively to rot. Rather than having the sort of Sky TV and all the rest of what people do seem to have in prisons. But I do think you should spend the rest of your days, your liberty taken away. I know people will say, well, actually, you're just taking up a cell and that's the cost of the taxpayer.
So many of these people end up not in cells. I mean, one of a particular case I read, and I don't know if it's this one I've got in front of me, the rape crime that was... covered up because the man was in a blimmin' asylum hotel. Oh, well, better not talk about that. Let me look at this. A migrant living at an asylum seeker hotel raped a vulnerable 17-year-old girl. Mohammed Akbari, 23, attacked her in bushes, having agreed to go to a park. The teen felt dizzy after Akbari from Iran gave her an alcoholic drink. She told him to stop. He claims she consented. Another one, a 27-year-old man staying in a hotel in Kensington, faces multiple charges over a serious sex attack, including rape and attempted rape. Oh, Kensington, yeah, where I live. I told you the weirdos are there following me down the street. He pleaded not guilty on June the 2nd, was remanded in custody. And just a Jordanian with an asylum claim was charged with rape while living at a Home Office hotel. He appeared at Tameside Magistrates Court, was remanded in custody. He's yet to enter a plea. An asylum seeker in a hotel in Yorkshire, charged with raping a girl aged 13 last Boxing Day. I mean, this goes on and on and on. And there's one particular case. This one. Here you go. Afghan national Sadiq Nikzad pounced on a teen in Falkirk, raped a girl of 15. In 2023, Defence Counsel Janice Green told the High Court there was a cultural barrier because in his home nation, child marriage is common. Oh, yeah, raping up little girls happens where you are back at home, so it's not your fault. Why are we letting them in?
Well, absolutely.
Sorry about that.
No, quite right too, because that's the frustration that everybody hearing that story will feel. You know, why on earth are these people in this country in the first place? But why on earth is that a defence? And why on earth would, under the current system, as we seem to see with the EHCR, where you can plead a right to a family life, or you can plead, if you deport me, I'll face torture back home. Well, you know what? Who cares?
I don't care.
If you commit,
go swing.
If you commit a crime, a serious crime, such as the ones that you've just talked about in the UK, then you have no right to be here, whatever. Not my problem what you face back in your own country.
If you've raped a little girl at the age of 13, she lives in torture. That ruins her entire life.
Yes.
That is her whole life destroyed.
And exactly, and I think the problem, of course, there's lots of problems around the EHCR, and people are talking about whether we should just leave it, whether it should be reformed. There is a problem with our judicial system where British judges, I think, are being far too liberal and lenient and accepting that argument about Article 3 and Article 8, which is the right to a family life in the UK or right to remain because you'll face torture back home. Who cares? But defence lawyers, defence barristers, actually using that as a defence, I think is something that needs looking into, because that, for me, is not justice. That's just throwing mud at the wall and hoping it sticks as some sort of argument to cloud the judgment of a judge when it's such a clear-cut case.
Oh, it's so obvious. You're a rapist. Get out.
Get out, exactly.
Now, we were talking in the first hour. Welcome if you've just joined us, by the way. Where have you been? You've missed out on so much. But in the first hour, we were talking about that extraordinary cross-examination of London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan by leader of the Conservative group in the London Assembly, Susan Hall, where she is saying to him, you are Police and Crime Commissioner of London as mayor. We know that there have been British Pakistani men conducting grooming gangs, mass rape of little white girls up and down the country. What are we doing to protect girls here? Wait to be enraged, because we've got the clip and we're going to show it right now.
I'm asking you, do we have those sort of gangs in London?
I'm not sure why she's so nervous to say what she means. What do you mean?
No. I am saying exactly what I mean. I'm saying, have we got any of those grooming gangs in London?
I'm unclear, Chair, what is meant by the question. If she could spell it out, I can answer.
I've just spelt it out. Are you not listening? It's the sort of gangs that groom young girls at a young age for sex. Exactly how much clearer do you want me to be?
That it's just so nasty. It is so bullying. It is so intimidating. It is so provocative. Come on, Susan, spell it out. Go on, spell it out, you Islamophobe. How dare he? That should have lost it. He should have been should have been a vote of no confidence in him. He should have gone. That behaviour is so appalling. So appalling.
Absolutely, it's bullying. It was goading, Susan, and as we said before, I wish she had just come out and said, well, it's Pakistani grooming gangs. It's Pakistani men in Rotherham, in Telford, in Oldham, in other parts of the country, up to 50 other towns and cities. That's what's the headline. That's what's in the news. It is Pakistani grooming gangs that are raping and abusing young British white girls. That is the headline, Mr. Mayor. Do we have those Pakistani grooming gangs in London, yes or no? And he absolutely, as you say, he would have then said to her, you know, well, there you are. I've exposed a far-right Islamophobic extremist in Susan Hall, who's part of this far-right bandwagon. Isn't she terrible? And you know what? Everybody would have piled in. Everyone in from the Labour ranks, top down. The Prime Minister, who called us all effectively far-right and jumping on the far-right bandwagon, has now got the brass neck to make a U-turn on it.
I know.
Everybody would have piled on Susan no end because she was saying what we all know to be true. And thank God that Baroness Casey has now exposed that. And confronted that issue. But the idea that in public office, people that are democratically elected in London have facing that kind of bullying tone from the mayor is an absolute disgrace.
It is a disgrace. He is a disgrace. He actually makes me sick to my stomach. I absolutely despise that man. I couldn't believe when I read out that litany of rape charges that have now been uncovered of men in migrant hotels. I mean... how do we live in a country where in 2025, after all that we've heard, like, you know, girl power in the Spice Girls and break the glass ceiling and equal pay and, you know, that stupid campaign of mates that the Mayor of London made and all of this stuff. Oh, we can't have page 3 in the Sun newspaper. We can't have poly girls in the Formula 1. Oh, but we can have Muslim men raping little girls up and down the country. That's fine. Phil in Kent says, I'm worried we will become an Islamic country. The only way we could stop this is to encourage the indigenous birth rate to rise and stop Muslims coming here. I worry we are too polite to take proper action. Basically, we'll become a Muslim country because as a nation, we were too polite to stop it. Now, that might seem to some a little bit extreme, a little bit hyperbolic, but shifting demographics, you look at the changes in other countries, Lebanon, even Turkey, it took a span of about 1 century to go from being a country that was multicultural to go to being a predominantly Muslim country. There is records of this happening in other parts of the world. I don't know what that means. I was going to say I don't know what the answers are. Partly I do, but I just don't think that as a democratic, peace-loving nation, we're ready to put any sort of policy in place that's going to start to change those demographics.
Well, I think that's right. And what that message said is that we have just been too polite. That is absolutely true. And further to a previous message where somebody said that we are tolerant. And we do believe in equality and we believe in fairness in the UK. But that is so different from what is actually happening. It's not about fairness. It's not about, there have been criminal activity taking place. There have been people that come into this country illegally, that cheat the system, that jump the queue, that get all kinds of benefits at hard-working taxpayers' expense. Where we can't even, get jobs for people in our own country, where we don't even look after veterans that have served, that are sleeping on our streets. Those are the people that are left behind. That's not fair. And so, of course, we're tolerant. If you do come to the country legally, if you've got a trade, if you've got work, if you can make a contribution, if you integrate, if you abide by our laws and make that contribution, absolutely, you've come here and you've made a better life for yourself. Great, because Brits, travel across the world and do exactly the same thing, you would hope. But it's when you cheat the system, when you break the law, we should be calling that out. We should have the strength in being British and being unified around the United flag.
We should have the conviction and faith in our own morality, that we are a good nation, we are a tolerant nation. We're not about to backslide into becoming some sort of Nazi Germany. If anything, what I see, and people often, look back in history and think, how did so many people go along with what the Nazi regime were doing? How is it that so many people in positions of power, in the educated classes, have gone along with what has been happening to our little girls? It is the same, and it's the middle classes very often wanting to protect their position, wanting to make sure that they're not ostracised, also kind of just believing everything they hear, but able to be brainwashed because they've never been exposed to the reality that working class people have. And it's about essentially one-upmanship. It's about protecting yourself, whatever the cost. That is how people in Nazi Germany ended up going along with Hitler. It was the academics, it was the teachers, it was the professors, it was the judicial system who backed Hitler because they wanted to preserve their own positions of power, their own societal status, and they knew that there were snitches everywhere. It's the same thing today of people who have not spoken out for these girls because they thought it was better to protect their job than speak truth to power.
Absolutely. There are people in this country that have been at best too polite. There have been people at worst that have been too apologetic for the United Kingdom and for the way in which, who want to talk us down and, want to talk up how terrible we've been as a country and how awful we are. So, everyone that is a minority, we must give, you every sort of, free pass and...
So we beatify people from other countries.
Exactly, but that is totally wrong. We haven't had enough people in those academic sectors or in the academic sector or throughout civil society to talk up the UK, to call out when things are wrong, to say, no, we're proud to be British. We have these values. Tolerant, freedom, society, but you abide by our laws, our rules, our cultures. If you don't like it, there are plenty of other places to go. And if you want to come to the UK, you make a contribution. If you want to come to the UK, you do it legally, fairly, and you pay your ways and you integrate. Otherwise, there are other areas across this brilliant globe for you to be. But you don't come here and you don't sponge off the state, you don't break the law, and if you do break the law, you're out.
Gone.
And exactly, but we don't do this because, we have just been, for those middle classes, those academics that talk down to everybody else to say, if you dare say what now we're saying, which I think is this national mood, then you are far right or you're a racist.
Oh, for them, sexual genocide was far preferable to disrupting the dream of diversity. Shame on the lot of them. Charlie, it's been wonderful having your company today.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. It's been great
always
to see
a pleasure. Right, we're going to be taking a short break now, but don't go anywhere because you've still got me all the way through until 10 o'clock. And keep your thoughts coming in. I've got lots of messages to read out at some point in the future. And I want more. 0344 499 1000 is the number if you'd like to send me a WhatsApp or indeed to leave me a little voice note that I can play out for everybody to indulge in. You can use that number as well to speak to me in person. If you dial it, anytime. You can register your interest with wonderful Tommy, who will take down your details, make sure you're not a full-blown nutter, and then at some point transfer you to the studio. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message if you're going to be a little bit old school about it and use that particular modus operandi. You've got to write the word talk before you ping your message. That way it finds its way into this studio and doesn't go to Times Radio downstairs or TalkSport over there or Virgin Radio. I mean, those poor lanyard-wearing, you know, lovies will have a heart attack with some of the things you say in text. So don't do that. We're on X at talkTV, and I'm back after this break.
It's a very, very large airfield with fences all around the outside, and it's conceivable that they turned up, cut the fence and got in.
Well, that shouldn't be able to happen, though, should it?
Well, you'd like to think that it couldn't happen. Certainly during a war, you would not want special forces nipping over the fence and doing worse.
No,
but
that's
what
I
I
mean.
would say with these guys, they're jolly lucky that they, you know, because there is lethal forces available. I mean, obviously not against people who aren't a lethal threat, but they should be very, very careful.
But it could happen.
It could if a mistake was made, yeah.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's right. It wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that, yeah.
She also revealed that she plied the Netflix executive.
Right, let's do some messages and some calls, shall we? That's Alex Phillips. I see, you probably know what my social media handle is then. That's Alex Woman. Morning, sunshine. Morning. Great show again. Thank you. What I want to know is how can anyone with an ounce of sense vote for and trust a leader who needed a Supreme Court judgment to tell him what a woman is? We are the laughingstock and dumping ground of the world. I really do despair. How could you trust someone who basically prejudiced the court case of countless political prisoners by calling everyone far right and making them plead guilty to neo-offences that have never received sentences the likes of which some of those people have been given? There are probably thousands of illegal immigrants that had no intention whatsoever of coming to the UK until they got a taxpayer-funded mobile phone call from someone telling them it's really, really true. The British actually do provide hotels, mobile phones, food and money. Come on over. Without a call like that, there'd be less illegals. This is the thing. What you're referring to there, James, I believe is your name, is the fact that NGOs are basically going around touting to these people that coming to Britain means you get all of this wonderful free stuff. You see them there in Cali going, why do you want to come to Britain? Because I want the hotel, I want the free phone, I want this, I want that. I mean, no, you don't get it. Bog off, or at least that should be the answer, but alas it isn't. Let's speak to Andrew, who's in Hertfordshire. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Alex, and how are you? Great show.
I'm all right, my love, I'm all right. Yeah, feeling quite, well, despite all of the dystopian surroundings, the apocalyptic end times that seem to be engulfing this country, I'm in quite fine fettle, thank you very much.
Yeah, the people to go after at Calais, that care for Calais, if you really dug down on that, the chuggers that are on the beach, they must know who the smugglers are, and then they effectively are creating a funnel of opportunity for these people. But I phoned about the rape gangs, and a very interesting point that Maggie Oliver made the other day, which is something you should drill down on. The Crown prosecution set a precedent when Starmer was in charge of it, that you could not be raped between the ages of 12 and 16. Up under 12, you could be raped, and they changed the law then. And that's when Pakistani men that commit these crimes, and it's not all of them, and we know, that effectively changed the law. And that's the root cause of the problem. If you find out when that decision was made and by whom and why, that is when the Pakistani grooming gang scandal exploded, because they had a get out of the law. And
So how is that possible? You cannot be raped if you're aged between 12 and 16?
Yeah, and Maggie Oliver explained it the other day too. Yeah, I know. You've got to drill down it. Maggie Oliver explained it to Julia the other day, and the law. As you know, law is based on precedent, and a precedent was set by the Crown Prosecution Service that they wouldn't charge anybody who was between the ages, a male who had raped someone between the ages of 12 and 16.
So hold on, so is it the perpetrator between 12 and 16, or the victim?
The victim.
Really?
Yeah, and the thing you've got to drill down on is who at the Crown Prosecution Service said, right, at this point at 12, it's not rape anymore, what it is, and that is the root
What is it instead?
Exactly, but you and I both know it's rape anyway, but the most interesting point on it is that precedent, when that was set, that's when the grooming gangs got control of young girls in the country.
So, Andrew, I'm going to have to look into that. I don't know about this. I'm going to look into it because that is absolutely shocking. I cannot believe what I'm hearing. I'm suggesting here that you might be implicitly suggesting, if that's a Crown Prosecution Service, who was it who was Director of Public Prosecutions at the time? I don't know. You might. Andrew, thank you ever so much for your call. Let's speak to Simon, who's in Wigan. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning, Alex. You all right?
Yeah, I'm right.
Yeah, just what about this word, the word Islamophobia, irrational fear, irrational fear. If you quickly read Douglas Murray's book, Deaths and...
I just finished it last night before I tucked myself up in bed at 8 p.m. I was listening to it on Audible.
So the question is, how can it possibly be irrational phobia against something that wants to destroy us?
That wants to kill you. I know. Something that explicitly says it's there in black and white in their holy book that, kill all the infidels, etc., etc. Oh, sorry, we want to kill you and take your underage daughters as sex slaves, blow up your concerts, slice the throat of your little girls. So don't be scared, though. Oh, nothing to be scared of here.
The world's going crazy.
Oh, it really
absolutely crazy.
Tell you what, it really has.
I'll leave you with that. I'm to say that a book has never stunned me as much. And to say that...
he's a national treasure, that Douglas Murray. He really is. Incredible man. And it's a very, very good book, Stark.
It's excellent. He should be Prime Minister.
I know. Bring him in as Home Secretary. I ain't doing it. Let's get Douglas to do that. Simon, thank you ever so much. Lovely speaking to you. Right, let's do some more of your messages. Hi team, why not use roadblocks in France and search all vehicles looking big enough to transport dinghies and outboard motors and confiscate them? Just roadblock the roads near the beaches. Well, problem is it's an over 100-mile stretch of coastline, okay, so it's kind of difficult, it's forested and all the rest of it, so as great as a plan that may be, it's only going to do part of the job. But also, here we go today in the newspaper, French police are everywhere but our smugglers are very clever. These people know what they're doing. They are able to evade and dodge law enforcement, but we apparently have now provided the French with all sorts of surveillance equipment, drones, all the rest of it. Well, great. Yeah, fine. We can spot the dinghies coming halfway across the channel. The problem is, even if we knew where they were and did intercept them, we just bring them over. We just bring them over and stick them in some sort of countryside spa hotel. If you just, you don't go look for a criminal and go, oh, look, there's a cat burglar. Come on in. Do you want the telly? Here you go. Here's the code to the safe. What's the blimmin' point intercepting these people and having all this surveillance equipment? It's just going to invite them to come to a party anyway. Oh, let's speak now to Lenny, who is in Ashford. Hello there, Lenny. Is that Ashford, Surrey, or Ashford, Kent?
Ashford, Kent.
Ashford, Kent. There you go. Well,
yeah.
Scene of a lot of action down there, I'd imagine.
It is. Well, there's 2 points I wanted to make, but one of them was that regarding what the gentleman said earlier, I think it was Andy, my question was the same, that there was a circulation that the girls of 10 years of age have chosen the profession to be prostitutes. Now, what it was, that went round to everybody, and it either started with the prosecution service. If it didn't start there, it finished there, because and so they and when they took notice of that, that actually gave everybody else a licence to do nothing.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Absolutely crazy to suggest that in any way, shape or form, a little girl, a minor, could consent to working as a prostitute. Absolutely astonishing and crazy and sick.
Right. And the other thing I wanted to say, regarding Susan trying to get some decent answers out of Khan, I truly believe he's ashamed of being a Pakistani.
Do you think he's ashamed of it? I think he's very proud of his heritage.
Well, I don't. I truly believe he don't want to mix Pakistani with the word rapist.
Well, no one would want to, would they? It'd be very difficult. You know, if I was over in sort of, you know, Costa del Sol and everyone's going, oh, well, you know, problem about the English, they come over here and shoot up our bars and a part of the drugs trade and they're all gangsters. I might feel slightly uncomfortable being there if that was a, you know, I'm not, there are plenty of very decent, good, law-abiding, integrated members of our society from the Pakistani community. Think of someone like Sajid Javid. So, you know, it is, but we cannot allow that. We cannot allow that sort of, we mustn't offend people to tiptoe around what is a sexual genocide.
I totally agree with everything you said, but he just cannot put the two together.
He's more than that. He knows what he's
unless
doing.
you accept the truth, you cannot solve it.
He doesn't want to. He knows what the truth is, and he knows what he's doing. He's vile. He's a bully.
Totally agree with you.
I really don't like that man, if you hadn't noticed. Lenny, thank you ever so much for your call. That was Lenny in Ashford. Now, before we go to break, it's your opportunity to find out how you can win tickets to probably what is going to be the biggest gig of 2025, nay, the 21st century, because Oasis have reunited. They're going on tour. Everyone's been scrambling for tickets. Everyone's been desperate to try and have a piece of history. Well, you can, because you're not only being invited to enter a competition to get tickets to go and see Oasis, those tickets are for the gig in Manchester, the hometown of the Gallagher brothers. We'll also put you up in a hotel and give you £5,000 to spend. Here's everything you need to know.
Alright, kid, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5,000 spending money, all you gotta do is text the word WIN to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, will you be my friend? I mean, I think that's what it wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, let's say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver, because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that, yeah.
She also revealed that she plied the Netflix executive.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. Now, you may have heard that Mr. Stephen Fry, at one point, national treasure. He with the prosaic language, verbose and forever entertaining. Well, less of a national treasure these days since he started. Ever since Brexit, they get this derangement syndrome where celebrities have to bang drums and become political campaigners. Well, he's just basically stabbed J.K. Rowling straight in the chest. Apparently, once upon a time, that was his mate. Now on a podcast, he's accused of being radicalised, saying her views are inflammatory and contemptuous. Put a sock in it, Steve. Anyway, let's speak now to Ella Whelan, who is a Telegraph columnist, and you've written a brilliant piece on this in the Telegraph, Ella. Why on earth is it that all of these celebs have to be part of the cultural woke elite? What's wrong with them?
Well, in particular, it's celebrities who have made a huge amount of money off of the back of J.K. Rowling's Potterverse. There's a high level of ungratefulness around anyone to do with Harry Potter. You know, you've had Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, all coming out and condemning her for having the temerity to stand up for what most of us understand as common sense, which is the idea that women are women and men are men. And Stephen Fry, you know, I think most people would have had a sense that he was pretty pompous previously. He's got that kind of reputation. But the way in which he's denounced Rowling is just kind of almost beyond parody. He's back in, a few years ago, I think it was 2022, he, on a podcast, he did this whole kind of display of sort of really sort of slithery sort of, she's my friend, I care very much about her, but people are very upset with her. As if she'd sort of, I don't know, as if she'd sort of, made a faux pas at a dinner party, rather than this being a really serious political issue that her as a woman had some, had a stake in. And obviously he's been embarrassed at too many dinner parties with her friend, and so has now come out and said that she's gone too far in this really kind of snarky way on another podcast. And, I said right in my Telegraph article, oh, who cares? Who cares what Stephen Fry thinks? Because his opinion, political or otherwise, doesn't matter. But what does matter, I suppose, is that his claims against Rowling is that she's kicking a hornet's nest of transphobia, that she's, he brings up the issue of suicide among trans individuals. He makes this really outrageous link that in some way her talking about women's rights is a direct link towards trans people attempting or committing suicide, which is a horrific thing to say and completely untrue. And the reason why that matters is because this is what women are dealing with when they're trying to talk about important things like who gets to run and work in a rape crisis centre or go to a rape crisis centre, what happens with female prisons, or even what happens with women's ability to be private in spaces like changing rooms or toilets or whatever. We know the arguments.
What I don't get, Ella, is, how is it that somebody, and it's not just Stephen Fry, there's plenty of them out there, they might not share his particular academic acumen or intellectual prowess, but most of the people who jump on these woke bandwagons are usually relatively bright. They've got quite far in life. They have decent careers. Perhaps they're even the Attorney General like Lord Hermer. And yet they bang this woke drum when it must be apparent to them. There must be some severe cognitive dissonance, because it must be apparent to them that allowing a man with a girt beard to put on a frock and go into the brownie tent, or to allow some sort of autogynophile with a fetish for urine to share toilets with women, to allow a hulking great Bert to pretend he's a girl and beat someone up in the boxing ring. I mean, it doesn't require much education to be able to see that that is plainly wrong. So how is it that these people manage to park reality, manage to somehow spin the truth inside their own heads in order to shower themselves in faux moral rectitude when the rest of us are looking at them like they're the emperor with the new clothes? I mean, I don't get it. I don't get how once upon a time all the left were queuing up to wear all the men I'm a feminist t-shirts, and as soon as it's about some hulking great pervert going into children's toilets, they're like, oh, but that's wonderful, it's fine, got to be kind. I don't understand how they've managed to divorce themselves from reality so much.
Well, if you have to be fair, the vast majority of trans people are not hulking great perverts. There's lots of people who are just trans, and actually it has to be said, lots of trans individuals aren't on the activist bandwagon. They don't want to. They're just getting on with their lives, being who they are. I think that's really important to note, because that's why there's this sort of, I think the discussion doesn't tend to happen around those extremes of autogynophiles or the list that you gave, but more around this, there's this kind of cuddly idea that everybody should just be allowed to be who they want to be. And right. I sign up to that, by the way. I think that there is, we should have flexibility when it comes to people's identity. But the difference is trans activists and their supporters like Fry want us to maintain the idea that people can feel how they want to be, but that they actually are. So it's not about saying this trans woman wants to dress like this and whatever, but it's saying this trans woman is actually a woman actually like you, Ella, and actually like you, Alex. And that's the step that obviously most people say, well, okay, I will indulge your desires to an extent, maybe, if I'm feeling polite, but I'm not going to step into a situation of fantasy, and a situation of fantasy that, you know, has real problems in reality for, you know, the way we organize society when it comes to things like schools, swimming pools, all the rest of it. And so I think the reason why for so long this has been a kind of issue, a bit like climate change, even a bit like Brexit, where it's sort of, if you're a nice person, you're on this side. You know, if you're a nice person and you want to virtue signal, or you just don't want to be mean to people, you're on the trans activist side. And the reason why is because that side is all about being who you want to be and living your own life and all these things that are, you know, again, I think are attractive and good if in a sort of reasonable context of reality. But the problem is it's stepped so far into total fantasy and a total degradation of women's rights and what it means to be a woman, that you have to at some point put your foot down and say, okay, there might be lots of reasonable people on this side, but I'm still not going to go along with it.
But how do these people live with a cognitive dissonance when they know surely that giving children puberty blockers was evil, that it was mutilating, that it was life-changing, that it was experimental? This is what I'm saying. All too often they go so far down the rabbit hole trying to promote their own moral rectitude that actual morality, actual rationality is a million miles behind them. I don't know how that can happen to someone, how they don't just sit there in the quiet of their own company and reflection. They don't go, do you know what, actually, you know, those people saying we shouldn't be mutilating kids probably have a point. Oh yeah, actually the women saying a woman shouldn't be facing a man in the Olympics boxing might have a reasonable position.
You know, I think this is why it's really important to not sit on our laurels. You know, this last year and a bit has had some quite serious victories for the sort of return of common sense around the gender wars. So obviously you had the closure of the Tavistock, which should have happened a very, very long time ago. And there are lots of young people who have suffered on the basis of the poor care that was given there. But that's close. Okay, there's going to be some other centres opening, but it was a win. We obviously had the win from the 4 Women for Scotland and the Supreme Court ruling. Again, a ruling that we all knew already that, you know, biology matters when it comes to women. But, you know, these things are wins. But that doesn't mean that it's over, because, you know, there are lots of people out there who will have signed up to this view that you just described, particularly when it comes to kids. And it's very hard to backtrack from that. It's very hard to back down. And okay, maybe the NHS isn't signed up to Stonewall anymore, and okay, maybe there's a few more there's a bit more scrutiny in the civil service, but this issue hasn't gone away, and we have to win it on a much deeper sort of moral and political level. And we really have to, I think, and this is my sort of thesis, is that we have to look at how the trans issue is related, has been brought along by identity politics, and actually in many ways brought along by a sort of a feminism that was more involved, becoming more involved in identity politics. Words like intersectionality, things like that all came from the sort of second and third wave feminism. I'm boring viewers now, but there's quite a deep sort of link. This didn't fall out of the sky, is what I'm trying to say. And I think we have to try and understand how we got here and the roots of the matter to really convince people why this is not a progressive thing to be involved in, you know, allowing children to, as you say, mutilate and permanently damage their bodies at such a young age. I think it's also really important to sort of revive the idea that a lot of this stuff is quite deeply homophobic. So if you are a boyish girl who finds she wants to wear yoga pants rather than a skirt, and you're told that actually it's easier for you to dislike your body and change your body rather than accept that you're a boyish girl, that's a problem for lesbians, and you know, vice versa if you're a boy who's a bit girly. And so I think a lot of this is sort of rooted in a remaining kind of distaste with gay people, and that's something that hasn't been sort of really looked into yet. Groups like the LGB Alliance are really good at talking about this stuff.
You know, when we talk about things like the puberty blockers for kids, we were talking for the first hour of the show, quite frankly, about the cover-up of the rape gang so as not to offend the Muslim community. It seems to me that there's a positive correlation between all the things that are beatified and venerated and ring-fenced and the stuff that's actually the most harmful to our society. When you look at things like, you know, the importance of the nuclear family, when you look at the importance of protecting culture, and I don't mean sort of art galleries and pretty buildings, although that stuff is important. I'm talking about the sort of framework of morality upon which we built a high trust society. That actually it's the things that are the most harmful to that then seem to be venerated and protected, and the public are then massively gaslit over having any concerns about them.
Mm. That's a fascinating question. It's actually one, if you allow me a plug, that we're going to be looking at the Battle of Ideas Festival, which is happening at the October the 18th and 19th of October, looking at some of these issues more deeply and saying, you know, what do we stand, asking the question, what are British values? What do we stand for in this country? And I think it's no good talking about the idea that there was something great in the past that we have to bring back, even though that might be true in some instances. I think what we have to do is face the challenge of how do we talk about what matters to us and how we want people to live in society in a modern context. So you gave the example of the nuclear family. There's nothing wrong with the nuclear family, but obviously there were big problems with the nuclear family for women historically. And so lots of people, when they hear that phrase, and when you talk about it, they say, oh, I don't like that because that used to mean women kitchen sandwiches. But how do you modernize? How do you talk about the importance of having a solid mum, dad, kids, home, safe foundation for children in a modern world in which, you know, yes, there are lots of different kinds of families, but not without losing why that idea of the nuclear family is important for children and instilling values in a young generation. So I think we're just not very good. We've been a bit cowardly of how to talk to people about what matters because we think, as you've alluded to, the public are just going to go off in some kind of horrendous, racist, sexist fury if they're given the space to talk about these things. And at the Battle of Ideas, we don't think that. We want to give people the space to talk about these things, and we will talk about these things. Good. But I think we have to do a bit of soul searching and say, actually, we've not been good at being honest with what it is we stand for. And, you know, you ask any politician, what's a British value? And they say something crap about fish and chips, you know?
Yeah, don't be ashamed at standing up and actually saying that we got things very, very right in this country, and we are prepared and willing, not just that, we're determined to defend it. Ella Whelan, thank you ever so much. Always a pleasure catching up with you. Thank you for rising so early for us as well. OK, right, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when I come back, it's time for the whole of the sports updates. You know, it's not exactly my strong point, but that's okay, because Talk Sport reporter Tom Clayton is going to be here in the studio to hold my hand and guide me through the lot of it. See you after this.
The lesson that I take from my experience in this is that keeping people informed accurately and in a timely way is absolutely key, and that includes members of Parliament. I've been contacted by people that I've worked with, professional colleagues and constituents who are currently stuck in Israel, and the thing that comes across over and over again is that they're getting conflicting advice. They're being told to move to Egypt or Jordan while simultaneously being told to stay put.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's right. It wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that, yeah.
She also revealed that she plied the Netflix executive.
Hello there, it is the weekend and that means there's lots of sport taking place up and down the country, and to guide us through a lot of it is Tom Clayton, talkSPORT reporter. First of all, of course, I think the big sporting event of this weekend are the Nays, Royal Ascot.
Absolutely, good morning. Yes, one of the great British traditional festivals of sport. Everyone kind of turns out in their most glamorous attire they possibly can. The gentlemen are expected to wear a jacket and a tie, and top hats are also thoroughly encouraged. But what's interesting about this year is the fact that this year is the 200th anniversary of the Royal Procession. Now, for people who don't know what the Royal Procession is, it was started in 1825, would you believe? And what happens is the King and Queen arrive via a horse-drawn carriage that gets brought up the track into the royal enclosure, where the royal family will sit for the rest of the day and watch the racing. And that happens every single day at 2 p.m. sharp, that they get escorted in. And I think it's great. It's one of our few traditions that we're allowed to have in this country. And I think it looks fantastic.
Just funny, Ascot, for me, the traditions of Ascot, whereas I always bet on the Grand National, I don't tend to watch Ascot in the same way.
Yeah.
I actually do quite like a bit of horse racing when I've been to see it. I love horses.
Yeah.
But
I think
Ascot
this is
doesn't
the
sort
thing.
of generate the same gambling, does it?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. There are several... I mean, the main events across the horse racing calendar, you've got Royal Ascot, you've got the Cheltenham Festival, you've got the Epsom Derby, and you've got the Grand National, as you said. I kind of feel like the Epsom Derby and the Grand National are just kind of big one-off occasions. Cheltenham is the festival that kicks off the horse racing calendar. And Royal Ascot just seems to be this moment in time where kind of everything stops and let's be posh for a day. You know,
Except it never is posh.
It never is posh.
No.
There's always someone laying in a ditch at the end of the day with a half-eaten kebab somewhere down the street.
That is one of my favourite Royal Ascot traditions, which is when you get the gallery of shame in the tabloid newspapers of the women absolutely off their rockers with bottles of Prosecco lying next to a dustbin. That is what I look forward to. Right, let's talk now about football, something I know very little about. But wow, 116.5 million big ones is what Liverpool has spent on some geezer called Florian Wirtz.
Yep.
Who is he?
Good
Why so much money?
So he's a 22-year-old midfielder from Germany. He is the next big thing, as people say. He's one of the best players in the Bundesliga, which is the German equivalent of the Premier League. And basically Liverpool said, we want your services. Bayer Leverkusen, his now former club, said, you can have him, but you're going to have to break the British transfer record to do that. So Liverpool are spending more money than anyone else ever has in terms of English clubs on this one player. And bear in mind, there are clubs in the Premier League who will have a yearly budget less than that. It's remarkable. It's a phenomenal amount of money. And you think about what you could do with that money outside of a football scope, but then you kind of realise, well, that's just kind of what football is. You know, football has become this incredible oligarch's playground of, expensive signings and things like that. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But, by all intents and purposes, Liverpool are champions. They want to kick on and win it again next year. And if they can do that, then they're going to...
Do you think he's worth it, this geezer?
I think well, what person in the world is worth £116.5 million? But in a football context, I think he probably is. He's, as I say, one of the best players in Europe at the moment. And he is young. He's got a lot of years ahead of him. I think he could be a big name going forward.
All right, okay, there we go. Now, Jack Draper is in the Queen's Club semi-finals. Do you know, I keep hearing of Cameron, Norrie and Jack. I wouldn't even be able to pick them out of, a lineup. I don't know who these people are. Like Henman I knew, Murray I knew, Greg Rosetsky, fastest serve at one point. Who are these people?
Here's the question. Would you not be asking that exact same question at the start of Andy Murray's career?
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
But I do feel like Andy Murray came with a lot more of do-do-do-do-do.
Yeah, I think it was because he was one of the great hopes, and it was kind of like all of a sudden British tennis was getting good, and he was like, he could actually win something, and he did. Meanwhile, there's been a bit of a development over the last couple of years where British tennis is in a better place. So you've got the likes of Emma Raducanu winning in the US Open.
She hasn't won anything since,
She's not won anything
She's gone rubbish.
Yeah, but she still won a Grand Slam title, which is pretty impressive.
And we didn't know her before then, actually.
No,
That's what made her known.
Exactly. I bet she wishes she wasn't known at certain points, I'll tell you that.
Success came too quickly for that poor girl.
But yeah, Jack Draper, he is by all intents and purposes, the next superstar of British tennis. I mean, he's got a couple of very, very strong players ahead of him in terms of the world stage, the likes of Carlos Alcaraz, who he could face in the final of Queen's tomorrow if he wins the semi-final today. Excuse me, Yannick Sinner is the world number one.
Yeah, see, I don't even know him. Who's he?
Well, this is the thing. It's a new generation, because we've spent the last 20 years, you know, fawning over how wonderful Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic were, and Andy Murray was. Yeah. I mean, bear in mind...
It's like every now and then you get one of those eras, don't you, where it's sort of all changed.
Well, I mean, I think one of my favourite stats, and bear with me on this, I think if you look at all of the Grand Slam winners from the last 20 years, I think only 3 Grand Slams in total, and bear in mind there are 4 a year, only 3 in the last 20 years have been won by people born in the 1990s, which is incredible. You know, it's all been won by people who were born in the 80s or born in the 2000s, in the case of Alcaraz and Sinner.
What went wrong in the 90s?
Their problem was they were trying to compete in an era where Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic were.
Oh, right, it was just monopolised.
It was just completely monopolised. And a lot of people say Andy Murray's the clear fourth in that so-called Big Four, and realistically it was a Big Three. I think we underestimate how good a job he did and how good he was to win something in that era. And what's the point win 3 Grand Slams?
So actually, you're sort of suggesting in any other decade, if those titans weren't there, Murray would have been the world leader?
I think he would have... Well, bear in mind, he was world number one at one point. He was ahead of them. And then obviously he, you know, broke several times, had too many injuries, and then kind of all of a sudden fell off a bit of a cliff, which, you know, it's a shame how his career ended, but I think actually he had a very fitting career, had a very good career, and I think in another era he might have won more than 3 Grand Slams, which, you know, interesting.
Didn't he come back as a trainer to Djokovic or something?
Yeah, so
like,
he's still working. He's still working with Djokovic as well.
That's really funny to think they used to compete against each other. He's like, here you go, lad, I'm going to tell you how you can do better, despite beating me all these times.
Djokovic absolutely loves him in the camp because he picks out all of the problems with his game. It's all right. I didn't notice that.
I know, Dan, just like throwing pens about the place. I like fiddling with a pen. I'm picking that back up.
Obviously furious about Andy Murray. But as I say, Novak Djokovic loves working with him because he picks... Andy Murray beat him on several occasions, and he's now telling Novak Djokovic how he beat him, what he did. So all of a sudden, Djokovic has got a bit of a turn in his head, thinking, I don't mind him. He's all right.
I quite like him.
Yeah.
I liked the fact he was really objectionable during COVID. That impressed me. He's like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, he stood for his principles, didn't he?
He did, didn't he? Yeah, I like him for that. Yeah. Wimbledon is about to kick off, isn't it?
It is. It is in a couple of weeks' time. And scandal has hit Wimbledon.
What?
Scandal. One of the great icons of Wimbledon, the punnet of strawberries with cream, is going to cost 20 pence more this year after a 15-year price freeze, and people are outraged. You're going to have to spend £2.70 on a punnet of strawberries with some cream. Which...
Oh, that's all right, actually, because I was going to say, I thought you were about to say it's like 15 quid. I thought that wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, London prices, London event prices. Trust me, I was at the cricket last night and spent 50 quid on a chip.
I've just heard that it's basically just 5 strawberries, though.
Yeah, it's not a massive thing, but, you know, it's one of the great traditions, and you think of Wimbledon, you think of Pimm's, you think of strawberries and cream. If you've got, you know, this many people buying this many, I mean, they're blaming the cost of living crisis, and I'm thinking, it's for blooming strawberries.
Right.
You know, so all these people kind of going there thinking, oh yes, let's get some strawberries. I don't think there's going to be a mass outrage at the fact that people are being charged an extra 20 pence.
Have you been to Wimbledon?
I've not, but I really want to go.
Would you do the camping thing? Would you actually sort of... I've never understood it when people sort of put little tents up and camp overnight to
they kind of get in the queue,
for anything. Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm the kind of person who I like to... I'm not a kind of crack of dawn kind of person. He says it. You know,
yeah, you are.
7:55
I
in the
know.
morning.
What time were you up this morning? What time did your alarm go off?
I know, tell me about it. But no, I'm the kind of person who I like to go to events after work. So, you know, I like to go to the cricket. I like to go to, you know, go and play golf after work and stuff like that. So for me, I'm more of an afternoon person, but I'd love to go to Wimbledon. It's one of my great things. I worked, before I came down to London, I worked for a local radio company, and we covered the Ilkley Tennis Trophy, which is known as the Wimbledon of the North.
Well, there you go. That's the big one, mate.
But you know what? That's actually such a great little tournament. Yeah. It's fantastic. They've just had it this year, and I'm gutted that I missed it. But Going to a tennis tournament like that is great. It's great fun. It's a really nice atmosphere. When the weather's good, you get your sun.
And when the weather's bad, Cliff Richard entertains the crowd.
Perfect. Some people are really into that.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd like to be there on the raining day where Cliff stands up and sings. That's what I would go for. Forget the tennis. It's all about Sir Cliff. Yeah. Tom, thank you so much. I've got to let you go. You've got to run off and do your bulletins now, don't you? So you're going to have to sort of, I don't know, crawl underneath the camera, or else they might play some sort of pretty pictures so you can escape gracefully. Thank you ever so much. Yes. Right, let's have a listen to a voice note now. This is Josh.
Morning, Alex. It's George from Northampton here. One thing about this smashing the gangs. Having a dinghy is not illegal. Why are they chasing dinghy dealers or boat dealers? It's not illegal to have those. Same with outboard motors. So I could drive a whole load of boats from China to France and not have committed a crime as long as I've got the import paperwork. So all this worrying about let's smash the gangs by finding the dinghy dealers is a bit strange.
Well, I hear your logic in that, Josh, I do. But the thing is, these dinghies are custom built to be able to accommodate about 100-odd people. They're custom built in China in order to aid and abet people traffickers, who are some of the worst scummy people on this planet. They're the sort of people who, and I say this on a number of my shows, so excuse me if you've heard me rant about this before. One of the reasons there are so many young men who come across and you don't see as many women is this. Because if you're a woman and you're starting to be part of the chain of migratory flows and you go from one place to one trafficker, pay that trafficker some money, then to another, pay that trafficker some money, guess what? A lot of the women are plucked off to either be trafficked into sex slavery or domestic servitude, sold in the slave markets on the black market. So a lot of the women don't make it as far as Calais, and if you're a teenager, it's even worse. If you're a healthy, able-bodied teenager, quite often you'll be plucked out of the migratory flows to be taken away to have your organs harvested. So anybody aiding and abetting that sort of evil, devilish criminality, and that includes the people in the factories and wherever they are in China, making these massive dinghies custom built to order, to be brought into Europe to help those people who are making billions of dollars from this miserable trade of human life, then yeah, the lot of you down the entire supply chain need to be dragged in front of a court and locked up for a very long time. Morning, Alex. The Labour Party not only need to be out soon, they need to be tried for treason for crimes against us, says Ringo. I wonder if we get this national inquiry into grooming gangs and it does what it's supposed to do, whether there are any local politicians or perhaps national ones who might have a pretty embarrassing time. Right, going to go to advert break now, but don't go anywhere. We're catching up with the deputy editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, to go through all of the day's stories just after this. I'll see you on the other side.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Yeah. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. Yeah. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not...
President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's where it wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that, yeah.
But she also revealed that she plied the Netflix exec.
Hello there, good morning and welcome. If you've only just joined me, you've missed 2 hours of pretty fiery debate, I'll give you that much. But welcome aboard HMS Common Sense. This is Alex Phillips here with you until 10 o'clock this morning. I hope you've got a wonderful weekend lined up for yourself with friends, with family and that glorious sunshine. You never know how long it's going to last, so don't moan about it being too hot, OK? Because in about 2 weeks' time, you'll be moaning that it's raining again. So go out there and enjoy it. Get those pins in the sun, I say. Get your vitamin D. It's good for you. Right, now, if you want to join the conversation at any point today, the number to call is 0344 499 1000. We've had some brilliant calls in the first 2 hours of the show, and I'd like to speak to more of you. And I said earlier, it's a bit like, you know, you don't have to wait two years on an NHS wait list to go see a therapist. You can come here, get it all off your chest for your standard network rate. Communal catharsis. It's like some sort of CBT, listening to Alex on a Saturday. Although I did just refer to myself in the third person, which is kind of weird. Maybe I'm the one who needs to go get my bonds checked. You can also send me a WhatsApp on that number, 0344 499 1000, or leave me a little voice note that we can play out to the nation. I really do like those. So don't be shy, don't be coy. You know you've got things you want to say. You say it to each other. You've been shut the radio a few times, haven't you? I know you have. Sharing is caring. 0344 499 1000, the number to call. You can register your interest at any point during the course of the next 2 hours, and Tommy will take your call, jot down your number and give you a call back when the time is right. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. If you're going to do that, you've got to write the word talk before you write your text, because we have multiple studios here in Murdoch's mansions, and we've got to make sure that it gets into my studio, because like I said earlier, some of the stuff you write, kids, if that stuff ended up down the Virgin studio, down there where they all have rainbow lanyards, yeah, if it ends up down there where they all sort of wear tracksuit bottoms to work and have funny unkempt hair, they'd have a heart attack. They're not ready for it, OK? This is the nice little right-wing safe space in Murdoch Mansion. So you've got to write talk before your message to make sure it hits up my studio and doesn't create cardiac arrest down there. OK, right, let's get on with getting on, shall we? Because I'm joined now by a brilliant man, Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray. Good morning, Freddie. How are you?
Good morning, Alex. I'm very well. Well, I'm in need of some Alex Phillips therapy, I think. So I'm very pleased to be here.
We're in need of yours, if anything. So fantastic to have you on board. Now, this story, I mean, we are ticking up to boiling point. Every time more and more information is released about the sort of cover-ups we've had in this country related to illegal migration, even legal migration of men from vastly different cultures committing sex offences. And we have today a report in The Sun about various rape charges of asylum seekers in taxpayer-funded hotels being kept quiet, being covered up to avoid inflaming community tensions. I'm sorry, the thing inflaming community tensions is putting these misogynistic, medieval, monstrous men into our communities where they're raping our girls. That is the problem. I mean, not the public's natural reaction to all of this. This article goes on to talk about, I mean, this particular guy, He appeared at Portsmouth Magistrates Court on June the 16th. He was remanded in custody. He's no longer at the hotel. But then there's more. It's not just this one in Portsmouth. There's a migrant in an asylum hotel raping a 17-year-old. Akbari from Iran gave a young girl alcohol. This was in Uxbridge, or at least at Uxbridge Magistrates Court. She told him to stop the assault. Harmondsworth, West London. He claims she consented to sex. The judge turns around and goes, well, do you know what? Because child marriage is okay in your country, not your fault that you made that mistake. Another one, a 27-year-old man staying at a hotel in Kensington in West London. Multiple charges over a serious sex attack, including rape and attempted rape. An asylum seeker from Jordan this time, a country that I didn't realise was at war at all. Another one, a Tameside Magistrates Court. An asylum seeker in a hotel in Yorkshire charged with raping a girl aged 13. I mean, it just goes on. It seems to me that a lot of men in these asylum hotels might not have a brilliant track record when it comes to women. And yet on it goes. And all we're told time and time again is don't tell the public. We don't trust the British public with this information. They might kick off. I mean, we are in a very, very dangerous situation, aren't we?
We are. And as you say, it is going on all over the country. And what you see again and again is the compassion of the authorities is in completely the wrong place. It's not with the victims of the crime. It's with the people who are here illegally, who are being housed. And therefore, there's always this assumption that the problem is not the crime, not the rape, but the reaction to the rape from the public, who are assumed to be racist Neanderthals who will blow up a hotel or so, and so on. And this has always been the case. Since the sort of 90s, this has often been the case with crime and migrant crime. And, you know, indeed, you look at something like terrorism. You know, when there were terrorist acts in previous decades, it was always concern about a backlash against Muslims in the community after an act of Islamic terror, not concern about how do we stop the terror, how do we solve this problem. So yes, this drives people completely crazy. Nigel Farage is saying that councillors who were involved in the cover-up should be sacked, fired. Yes, I think that's an obvious first step. But the problem is deeper. It's an institutional reaction that happens over and over from people who think that they're being compassionate while not realising that they are helping fuel large-scale sexual violence against young British women.
I think you're being far too compassionate yourself there. I think a lot of these people, if they've covered up these crimes, know exactly what they're covered up unless they're completely deranged and have had a full frontal lobotomy. I think it's very clear if you've got young white girls, 13, 14, 15, being gang raped and you're deciding to conceal that you're not doing it for the betterment of society. I find it wildly improbable that someone is so lost of their moral compass that they think they're doing something good. And so I wonder why the cover-up. I get the impression, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, I have a feeling if that national inquiry were allowed to spread to the parameters that it needs to go to, the level at which we need to be digging around and finding out why this was not just brushed under the carpet, but people were demonised when they tried to bring it up. People have been thrown into prison, quite frankly, being vilified in the public square, being ostracised, being sacked from their jobs. I think it goes much deeper than this, and I have a feeling if that big national inquiry were to really dig around in the shadows, that the Labour Party could be in big, big trouble. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the grooming gangs inquiry is going to cause real problems for Labour. It's also going to cause problems for the Tories. It's another issue on which reform only wins, because, yes, I think there have been cover-ups that are not just about compassion. There have been actual corruption and even possibly involvement of people who are supposed to be in positions of authority. But I'll stick to my point that I think in a lot of the cases it is just a very, very misguided sense of compassion that leads to people thinking that they are protecting the community when they are doing anything but.
Talking about a misguided sense of compassion, two big debates have happened in Parliament in recent weeks on killing people one being assisted dying. That managed to pass yesterday by a narrower margin than perhaps was expected in the Commons. It goes to the where there are people who want to shoot down this legislation. And then, even more staggeringly, out of nowhere, I don't know who was calling for it, all of a sudden, you can terminate a pregnancy right up until full term. I mean, this to me is madness. Madness, Freddie.
Well, I think on the abortion, take about Labour MP Stella Creasy. She's very keen on this. I think, people talk about the government killing Britain, in all sorts of ways. But this week we've had it literally. I think the assisted dying one actually interestingly connects to the abortion story because if you go back to 1967 when the Abortion Act was passed, the assumption then was it would be safe, legal and rare. Abortion was a measure for women in extremely difficult situations and so on, and it was a big debate in the country and it was passed. People talk about the thin end of the wedge and say it's not a good argument, but it is a good argument in this case because now you have 1 in every 3 or 4 conceptions in this country results in abortion. And now you have decriminalisation, effectively, not quite legalisation, but it means that anybody can kill a child up till birth. And I don't really see why we don't say, on that one, I don't see why we don't say infanticide. If you want to kill your child at 6 months, why is a child protected just because it happens to have gone through the birth canal?
Right.
I think this is a terrible, terrible law. And the reason I say it connects to the assisted dying bill is that right now it seems as though it's again, compassion, missed compassion. It seems as though it's an act that will only be used for people who are, going to suffer a lot and just want to, end their lives so they don't have to suffer massively. And of course, everyone has tremendous compassion for those cases. But let's fast forward to 30, 40 years. And I don't think disability campaigners are wrong to be concerned that they might be deemed, surplus to social requirements.
Yeah. No, I think it's very terrifying. And the thing is, once law... I'm not very good on the detail of this, but my impression is that once something's been passed as an act of Parliament and a law has been created permitting something, when you then get challenges to that, when people want to widen the boundaries of that legislation, that tends to happen on a case-by-case basis in the courts, which then sets a precedent. So you could have someone challenging the legislation and saying, well, look, I'm given a year to live, but the last 6 months of that year are going to be especially grueling, and so I want to now be involved, and I want to be able to have assisted dying as well. And then some top judge will go, yes, okay, we agree. Then all of a sudden the 6 month limit that was on that legislation has gone, and then it will be someone saying, well, look, I'm under 18, but the disease I've got is chronic and it's really painful and I'm suffering, but if I was just born a week before, I'd be able to get... Okay, right. So let's scrap the age limit. And what seems to happen over the course of time is drift, and all of those safeguards and all of those limitations that are being wrangled over right now in various committee rooms in the Palace of Westminster that will be challenged in the Lords. Once you then establish the legislation, they tend to then all sort of dissipate over the course of time. That is the concern, isn't it?
Yes, it's absolutely the concern, and it's absolutely what is very likely to happen. What we're talking about here really is suicide. And I think, assisted dying, the key is always in the language. Assisted dying is a euphemism, and euphemisms, particularly when it comes towards death, are used to cover up nasty things.
Yeah.
When it comes to this particular law, I think we are going to see, yes, as people have said, people feeling like a burden, feeling that their lives aren't worth it because they are a burden. We will see, as we've seen in other countries, younger people who may be briefly depressed, taking their own lives with physician approval and help, assistance, crucially, because it's not just pure suicide. Somebody's got to give the prescription for the death. So it's killing or it's suicide.
I hate the infantilization of language over this. Dignity in dying. It's like, well, no, let's just call it what it is. It's state-sanctioned killing. And I have a huge amount of compassion for people with horrible chronic diseases. I had a member of my own family die from MS who contemplated Dignitas. This is a matter that's very close to my own heart. But I never understand why there hasn't been a debate about the sort of our health service and hospices first. If people have a waiting list to get a doctor's appointment, if cancers aren't being picked up and diagnosed quickly enough, and if 2/3 of the funding for actual dignity in dying, which is what a hospice provides, not killing but dignity in dying, 2/3 of their funding are having to come from donations and charity shops and bequeathments, we could be problem. You don't just accelerate to the end point of, I know, let's help someone kill themselves instead. You sort out that stuff first if you're a civilised country.
Well, as ever, Alex, you put your finger precisely on the point. The real motivation here, and in many ways it's a sort of mass social unconscious motivation, is that we have a massively aging population. It's extremely expensive, and we don't really have a good way of paying for it at the moment. And therefore, there is a sort of drive. People won't admit this in government, but there is a drive towards thinking, what do you do about the problem of the elderly? And of course, the cheapest way of dealing with the elderly is to kill them off. And I think this may be where we're going as a society, and I think it points towards a very cruel future.
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely dangerous. I think I find it quite frightening. And like I said, I have a lot of empathy with those people who do want assisted dying. But it's just one of those things that you need to have some sort of, you know, some sort of glass ceiling in place where something should become unconscionable. And the state's being able to kill somebody, to me, is one of those bounds. Very quickly, before I let you go, it seems to me that the latest reports on government borrowing is that's just going to go up. All sorts of things can add more global pressures, inflationary pressures, and that we could essentially be hit by even more taxes from Rachel Reeves because all of the costs and all of her estimations could potentially be just blown out of the water.
Well, we're in a death spiral on the economy too. So, I mean, every time government borrowing gets more out of control, we think that taxing is more the solution. And I know this isn't very fashionable economics, but the fact is the reason we're not growing as an economy is because people are being taxed beyond reasonable levels. And therefore the economy isn't growing, and therefore the government gets more into debt, and then it raises taxes again. And this is not the way a healthy society should go.
No, it absolutely is not. We are in a doom spiral indeed. Freddie Gray, Deputy Editor of The Spectator. Thank you ever so much. There you go. That was the Therapist Couch with Freddie Gray. That was our communal catharsis of today. Keep your thoughts coming in on all of the topics we are discussing. 03444991000 is the number to call if you want to have a chit-chat with me. Hopefully we'll be taking some of your calls at about past, maybe. So register your interest now, and the wonderful Tommy will actually give you a call back when the time is right. It's your normal network rate. And I'd love to talk to some of you on whatever it is you want to talk about today. 03444991000 is also the number if you'd like to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note. You know how much I do like those. 8722 is the number to text. You've got to write the word talk before you write your text. That way it enters the little micro Cape Canaveral I have here set up in front of me. We're on X at talkTV. And after the break, we're going to be having the big political ding-dong. It's Mike Buckley versus Simon Danchuk in this weekend's head-to-head. That's after this.
There's a bill going through Parliament which will give counter-terrorism powers to our enforcement, the ability to get in much earlier. I know we've got to do more. That's why I'm working with our partners to do that, particularly Maryland, to law enforcement in the north of France. And then importantly, when people do come to the country who aren't entitled to be here, processing their claims and then returning them to where they came from. And since we been in power, 30,000 people who've no right to be in the Kingdom have now been removed from the United Kingdom.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's right. It wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that. Yeah.
But she also revealed that she plied the Netflix executive.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. This is Alex Phillips with you until 10 o'clock this morning. 2 hours down already. I can't 2 hours, 20 minutes. Can't believe it. Time has really flown by. Thank you so much for keeping me company. Now I have two wonderful erudite men who are about to have a fisticuffs keeping me company in the studio. It's Simon Danchuk representing the right, former Labour MP but then defector to Reform, and Mike Buckley, former Labour Party advisor. OK, gentlemen, shake hands. Let's start off friendly. There we go. Right. Let's go. Let's talk about this story. Simon, I'm going to start with you because, of course, you were Rochdale MP and then that's a grotesque by-election in Rochdale that you so valiantly fought. Rochdale child grooming ringleaders. We're trying to deport them to Pakistan. These are disgusting, heinous men, one age 55, one age 54, jailed in 2012 as ringleaders of a 9-strong gang of Asian men who sexually assaulted 47 girls, some as young as 12. We're trying to get rid of them, but Pakistan has said, well, they've renounced their citizenship. They tore up their passports. No doubt they were told to do that. So we can't take them back. What are your thoughts?
Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. I was the MP for Rochdale 2010 to 2017. It was in 2012 that the Rochdale grooming scandal broke, and I campaigned on behalf of the victims and also campaigned for these guys to be deported. And in 2018 we got it so that they could be deported. In law they could be deported, but as you say, they ripped up the passports. I'd convinced in Parliament Theresa May, the then Home Secretary, that action should be taken against them. We won all that. We spent a lot of money, the taxpayer spent a lot of money on legal aid defending these guys, which is outrageous in its own right, and yet they're still here. And this is because we take too notice of international law. I mean, the reality is we should insist Pakistan take them back, and if they don't, then we stop all visa relationships with Pakistan and we stop all international aid, and then I think they take them back in double quick time.
Right, that's a fair point, isn't it, Mike? That Pakistan, frankly, we want to deport them back to Pakistan, and Pakistan is now sort of, it seems to me, using them as a bit of a pawn in a game, saying we want the national airline PIA to be able to have direct flights to the UK, despite them being suspended for safety reasons. I mean, you normally get this boatmanship in politics, but we are a bit soft on Pakistan. We give them a fair whack of money in aid. We want to deport these people. They should take them back.
They should take them back, and I think that's probably the likely result. I don't want to see our government resorting to threatening another country, and I don't want to see our government going against international law. This has gone on far too long, all that said, and I'm staggered it's gone on for as long as it has, and clearly the vast majority of the time when nothing was happening was under the last government. This government's been left to pick up the pieces. I'm glad that it is now putting effort into getting these people returned, and I hope to see it happen as soon as possible. But our government needs to behave in a responsible manner, and I would imagine most of your listeners would want to see that too.
Yeah, but so it's not threatening Pakistan to say we're going to remove your aid. I mean, that's charity. They don't have any specific rights. They shouldn't have to demand that. That's the British taxpayer saying, we've got a past colonial relationship with you. We want to help you combat poverty. Here's a charity check. But surely there can be conditions to that.
Well, I don't know how much aid they receive. I mean, you might know better than me how much aid they receive. I wouldn't imagine they receive a huge amount. And, of course, as we know, the aid budget's being cut anyway. But they're a middle-income country, so they won't be at the top of the list of aid spending in any case. If they do receive aid, then of course it will be going to people who are desperately poor and will really need that money. I don't want to see our government taking that away and impoverishing people who've borne no responsibility in this scandal.
Well, but this is diplomacy, isn't it? And the bigger issue is visa rights. So we have a large population of Pakistani Pakistani origin in the UK, and if we say to Pakistan, listen, now the people coming from Kashmir, Mirpur, in Azad Kashmir are coming into this country until these two arrive in your country, then there would be uproar, and they would soon change their Pakistan would soon change their tune, and that's diplomacy. They're trying to bargain over their airline. I've flown with Pakistan International Airlines, and I wouldn't recommend it, to be quite frank. They're trying to negotiate diplomatically. We should do the same. We should say nobody's coming into Britain from Pakistan until you take these two back. And once we did that, they take them back in double quick time. Let's get this sorted.
I want to talk about a story that I've covered earlier on today as well, which is this article in The Sun today, which has exposed quite how many men living in migrant hotels have committed rape. Rape. Now, the Casey report, I've been banging this drum forever, right? I've been talking for a long time how men from certain countries with medieval misogynistic views come into this country and terrorise women. And it's true, I am one of those women. I'm followed down the street, I get harassed. It ain't fun, and I've had enough of it. And yet I've been called a racist, a xenophobe, a monster. You can't do that. And thank goodness the Baroness Casey report has come out, which is beginning to lend some statistics to my complaints. Now we found out in The Sun of a number of cases where men living in taxpayer-funded asylum hotels have committed the most heinous crimes against women, and it's been covered up because of community tensions. Fed up with the cover-ups. Do you think, Mike, that if all of a sudden we learned the full truth of what was going on up and down the country, when we did actually have a clear picture of the threat that some men born in some countries are towards our own girls, that the general public would erupt into all-out violence? Do you think there are needs for this cover-up?
No, I don't think the general public would erupt into all-out violence. I mean, it's worth saying again, the vast majority of crime in this country, including violent crime, including sexual crime, is committed by white British people, obviously, because that's the vast majority of the population. There's no indication that asylum seekers, people in refugee hotels, wherever, that there's a great proportion of those people who commit violent crime or sexual crime. Of course, just by dint of statistics, a proportion of them will. They need to be dealt with in the right way. I'm very glad that this grooming scandal investigation is happening with Baroness Casey. It does appear that some ethnicity data was not released into the public domain when it should have done in the past. That was a terrible thing. I'm glad that is now being addressed, and politicians on all sides of the House, thankfully, have said, this is terrible, it's got to stop. And that is why Baroness Casey is doing the work that she's doing.
In terms of the statistics, the truth is that sexual crimes against women are disproportionately committed by particular ethnic minority groups, perhaps from Turkey, Iran, parts of the Middle East, and other countries as well, and that's statistical fact. So they're
where have you got that fact from?
Well, I can't quote you the source, but
we do know for rape
you've just mentioned a bunch of countries with no evidence whatsoever, and you've just accused ethnic minorities
for rape convictions
of being more likely to be rapists than white people.
They are.
I don't know if there's any statistical evidence of that.
Mike, there is statistical evidence,
but you can't point to it.
Well,
I can.
Right, listen.
I can point to it.
Carry on.
There is evidence, right? The Casey report that you mentioned, she makes it quite clear that looking at a number of the cases, that there's a disproportionate number of foreign nationals and asylum seekers represented in the grooming gangs. That's her report. That's in her report, and based on the facts that she's got. So that means that your leader, Keir Starmer, right, he's increased illegal immigration into this country since he became Prime Minister by 30%. He's increased the number of illegal immigrants coming into this country by 30%. That means a disproportionate more number of people who are going to get involved in grooming gangs, in rape gangs. So under your Prime Minister, we see more people coming into this country illegally and getting involved in rape gangs. And that's the problem that we've got. That's the problem we've got with a Labour government. More illegal immigration, more rape gangs. And it's a major problem for Britain.
Well, I mean, you're confusing a whole number of different things there. The grooming gang scandal, it was primarily people from one particular ethnic background, that's true, but those people were not illegal immigrants into the UK.
But the report you were quoting, Louise Casey says it's a disproportionate...
There's no indication
Louise
that
Casey
asylum
says it.
seekers are overrepresented.
Louise Casey says that
because
in
they
the
come from
report.
different places and different countries, and you can't just homogenise the whole world
But I think, hold on, but there is a common denominator, isn't there? Because the Telegraph did a report of rape convictions by nationality, and they found that 1 in 4 were committed by foreign-born men from Muslim countries. Okay, the common denominator are Muslim men and their attitudes towards non-Muslim women. Not all Muslim men, we know that. We're not idiots, we're not trying to be provocative, we're just trying to have an adult conversation. Now, surely we don't necessarily need to, put out a whole load of statistical data when it's Occam's razor, right? To use the idea that if men are coming from a country where women have to dress up like ghosts, where they need male escorts, where they can be stoned to death for adultery, and then they come into a country where there's hypersexualization, particularly of young girls, that you're going to have a big problem on your hands. Why does it have to be that women have to sit there, be ignored, be called names, be demonised when we just want to feel safe on our streets? And no, we've got to wait for the data, and then the data's deliberately concealed. We are snookered on this. Why is it that women and girls are thrown under the bus at the altar of blimmin' diversity? That's what I want to know.
We all want women to feel safe. I want women to feel safe. I'm sure that Simon does as well. But conflating all of these things, accusing particular groups, accusing lots of people who are entirely innocent, doesn't move us any closer to
I've done the disclaimer, not all Muslim men, but you've got to appreciate the common denominator is men from Muslim countries,
isn't it? The vast majority of asylum seekers do not commit crime. The vast majority of Muslim men and Muslim women and kids and anybody else don't commit crime in this country. A small proportion of them do, as a small proportion of white people do. That should be addressed. When there are specifics related to one ethnic community or another, that should be addressed. This government is seeking to do that. The Baroness Casey report is one response to that, and I'm very, very glad that it's happening. But to create, hyperbole and to just not...
Is it hyperbole?
And
I'm
to
sorry,
not be
but
interested,
I've been followed down the street 2-3 times.
To not be interested in statistics, which has to inform our debate and has to inform Baroness Casey's report, and has to inform...
But we have statistics emerging now.
The state has deliberately...
Exactly, and I'm saying that we should use those
statistics. The state has deliberately not collected statistics on ethnicity so that this wouldn't be an issue. And the truth is that all the warm words that you are spouting at the moment, Mike, have created the problem we now have, and it's finally come to a head, I'm pleased to say. But the Rochdale grooming scandal occurred in 2012. That's when it came to court. Yeah. So the abuse had been committed much earlier than that, and it's been going on for literally decades. And only now are we finally, because we're openly talking about it, and quite rightly getting upset about it, because it's finally coming to the public's attention, and they're not going to put up with anything unless it's a proper solution. We can't talk like you are any longer about it. We have to be open and say that ethnicity and certainly religion, Islam is the common denominator in these types of crimes, disproportionately, and now that we're talking about it openly, I just say thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for that, because the public won't put up with this until government of whatever colour takes direct action.
I am moving out of this city now. I have had to leave London because where I live in West London, I cannot walk down my street anymore. That has changed in the past 4 years. I can't go to Sainsbury's to buy a pint of milk without a man coming up to me in my personal space, leering, harassing, following, intimidating. I'm a 41-year-old woman with thick skin, right? I've lived in many countries of the world. I've worked in Pakistan. I'm being driven out of my own capital city because I'm fed up. I'm fed up with this. And I reflect so many women out there. Sorry. It really does upset me. Walk a bloody day in my shoes. Sorry for saying bloody Ofcom. Twice. Walk a day in my shoes and you'll realise what it's like out there. Let's cheer ourselves up, shall we? It's competition time, because here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets. Not just any Oasis tickets, probably the best Oasis gig that this year is going to see, because it's the one taking place in Manchester, the birthplace of the Gallagher brothers. Not only that, we're going to put you up in a gorgeous hotel and give you $5,000 to spend. Here's everything you need to know.
Alright, kid, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and $5,000 spending money, all you gotta do is text the word WIN to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Prince Harry's just going around people's houses, buzzing, going, "Will you be my friend?" I mean, I think that's where it wasn't drugs or anything.
Well, they say he was practising to be a Deliveroo driver because that'll be his next
He'd
job.
be good at that, yeah.
She also revealed that she plied the Netflix executive.
Hello, welcome back to the show. So I lost my rag a bit there, didn't I? I'm just this topic. It really does mean a lot to me on a personal level, and I just, it makes me go blue in the face when I'm trying to sort of, when women just want to feel safe. That's it. So blimmin' simple. It should be so simple. Let's talk now about a matter of taste. Everyone, of course, knows about the Southport murders, one of the most horrific atrocities that have taken place in recent history. Sadistic Axel Rudacabana, as you know, killed Elsie Stankham, B.B. King, Alice De Silva Agria at that Taylor Swift dance class. Well, now Netflix think it's a great idea, because no doubt it's going to get a big audience, to produce a two-part drama covering the devastating riots that followed. Where do you sit on this one, Mike? Because the thing is, part of me is going, well, that's tasteless. That's not really a good thing to do. And no doubt it'll be the sort of thing I'll watch and get very angry about the way that certain things are portrayed. But I will be queuing up to watch it. I will be one of those people fascinated to see it.
I mean, there's not enough in the article that I've read to tell me how they're going to play it, and what they're going to focus on, and how much is going to focus on the horrific act that happened, how much is going to focus on the riots, the political response to the riots. It does say that somebody's playing a character whose Oxford education is a university lecturer at the London School of Economics.
Right, exactly, the
I don't
typical rioter.
I don't entirely see how that's relevant, if I'm honest. Anyway, maybe it'll be an interesting drama, but my gut reaction is this is too soon and that this is tasteless.
Right. Yeah, I think maybe it is about the time frame. Do you think so as well? Yeah.
I mean, people are grieving those little girls, the families, people in those communities, and of course the people who were involved in the riots or who were affected by them are still, responding to that. It feels like this could maybe happen 10 years from now, but right now it just feels wrong to me. But clearly we have no influence over it, and as you say, probably lots of people are going to watch it.
Yeah, this is where Mark and I are going to agree, I think. I think it's far too soon. It's not unusual to make documentaries or dramas about heinous crime, etc., but as have been done previously, Fred and Rose West, Dennis Nielsen, the serial killer. But it's always been after a decent amount of time, and I think this seems far too soon for most people.
There's also this risk, and I don't want to jump the gun here, but there's also this risk that a lot of them, because I don't know what it's going to portray, how it's going to be made, but a lot of members of the British public might kind of think of this as a bit of a psyop, because, there was this sort of strange backlash, wasn't strange, I think it was a justified backlash, about the way adolescence was constantly forced on the British public. Isn't it terrible? Little white incels, little white schoolboys are such a danger to the public because they watch Andrew Tate. And there are people in the public going, hold on, that wasn't what we were particularly concerned about when it comes to women's safety. Yes, it's a thing that needs discussing, but it was this weird thing that it was constantly pushed. Have you seen it? Have you seen it? And people started suggesting it was some sort of must-watch documentary. And so I worry when something like this is being commissioned so quickly after those riots, whether it will also have that element of sort of, you know, demonising white working class people, demonising, say, protesters who weren't the ones who were lobbing bricks or setting fire to braziers outside migrant hotels, and whether what it does in the end is sort of alienate the public.
And it's almost it's undoubtedly the case that they will get some facts wrong as well, you know, as always happens in these dramas, or for, you know, for artistic purposes they change some theme to the particular story, so they'll get it wrong, and then there'll be uproar about that. I think it'd be best left alone for a couple of years at least, I would have thought.
So, well, there we go. Let's see. I mean, sadly, I probably will be one of those people who will rush to watch it because it is fascinating, and especially when things sort of, you know, reflect your reality and things that have happened. It is, and true crime is sort of really beguiling. Do you know, it's interesting, you mentioned Fred West documentaries. When I was a little girl, I remember walking with my mum through the city centre of Gloucester, because that's where I'm born and bred, and the bookshop in Gloucester, and it wasn't that long after, you know, Fred West had killed himself. The bookshop in Gloucester had all these books about true crime, Fred and Rose, you know, the real story. My mum went tonto. She went in and just said, get these books out the window. People from Gloucester know the victims. They know, you know. And I think that was the right thing to do. And it makes me think, actually, that, yeah, you're right, this could be way too soon. Now, the BBC, they seem to have been embroiled in a little bit of trouble. BBC Breakfast in a bullying scandal. I mean, look, there's issues up and down workplaces across the country when it comes to the BBC. You know, should things be taken extra seriously because it is funded by the licence fee payer?
Well, there seems to be a problem with TV shows like this. There's BBC Breakfast. A couple of years ago it was This Morning over on ITV. You know, these long-running shows that have an editor and they have the star talent, and, you know, there seems to be something that goes wrong in those environments, whether it's bullying or sexual scandals, and I don't know how to. Obviously, I've never worked in, you know, TV in that sense, so I wouldn't know how to fix it.
You're working in TV
I'm working in TV right now, but I'm not in this office every day.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Though I'm sure that you know, Talk Radio and Talk TV is perfectly run and perfectly lovely.
No, it is. It's very lovely. I mean that genuinely.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad. I've never had any indication otherwise. But you do wonder just kind of what goes wrong in these places. I mean, is it the ego of the editor or of the star talent, or is it that people are just in at strange times of day? I mean, I don't know. But it does seem like there are complaints here to answer about bullying in particular, and about potential sexual misconduct as well, or at least use of bad language. So, I mean, I just hope that it's dealt with, and that if people need to leave and face accountability, then they do.
I do think it relates to star talent to an extent, but I also believe, perhaps contrary to what you were saying, Mark, is that the BBC has a major problem with this. I mean, this is another example of bullying. It's not that long after you, Edwards. We've had Stuart Hall, who used to do It's a Knockout. We've had Jimmy Savile, undoubtedly. Many people in between. I mean, these are serious cases, serious allegations, but in some instances proven cases, where the BBC have just got it wrong time and time again. And I just think there's something culturally very wrong with the BBC itself as an institution, where this sort of atmosphere and culture manages to develop and on a regular basis. I mean, it's not a one-off. I mean, it's every few months we hear of another scandal related to the BBC in terms of whether it's bullying or sexual inappropriateness or whatever else.
I don't know whether the BBC is overrepresented or not, or if we just take more notice because it is the BBC and everybody knows about the BBC. And also, it's been there for over 100 years. I mean, it would be staggering if nothing had gone wrong in over 100 years.
But then, of course, you know, the television industry, big stars, big pay, big egos, and a lot of people in fear of them. I think there is a culture of fear. And I think perhaps especially at the BBC, because if you're a presenter at the BBC, you know, you're prime time, you're big, you're well known all around the country. Maybe less so now I've got 5,086 channels to choose from, but certainly previously, you were a megastar when you appear on the BBC, unlike me, who's just Little Miss Nobody here on Talk.
But I do think it is different. I think it's different because it's not commercial. And so, you know, Gary Lineker was there for years upon years, and you can decide whether you like him or not, but he was there with a very secure, big amount of money, and there's no commercialism involved, and that creates a completely different dynamic to how the organisation is run and how it polices stuff like bullying and sexual inappropriateness. So I think it is different, and I think the BBC is more prone to this type of incident than perhaps other organisations because it's not commercial.
I'm not sure his funding model would have anything to do with it, but I mean, we can perhaps talk about that another time, but I personally don't see the link.
Right, now, here we go. This might be one that we slightly fall out over. Oh, just before I say that, because we were talking about bullying, and Naga Munchetty is one of those people accused of behaving inappropriately, and Naga's representatives have been approached for comment, and it's unclear whether she will rebut the claims in The Sun. Now, the Notting Hill Carnival. It's about, a month and a half away still. It's not even round the corner, but apparently people are already calling for it to be... Oh, we're going to have a little advert break first. I'm sorry, Phil. We've got to pay wages, don't we? All right, here's some commercials. We'll be discussing Notting Hill after that.
Well, it is, and I thought Diane Abbott actually made a very powerful intervention today. That's a phrase I've never used.
Oh, hang on, Robert. No, so we've booked the wrong guest, guys.
You've got the wrong
Robert's
guest.
gone mad. He's citing wisdom from Diane Abbott.
Not for the first time, gone a bit mad in my case. But she is against this, and what she said was that she wouldn't want to put, and I quote, her life in the hands of a panel. Yeah. And we can add to that a government-sponsored panel.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, I teased it a little bit before the advert break now, and let's get stuck in, shall we? Anyone who listens to the show regularly knows which side of the fence I'm on about this, but essentially it's about whether the Notting Hill Carnival, this particular report says it deserves to die. My personal belief is it should just be moved. It makes no sense to me that it, goes up and down the residential streets of Notting Hill with multi-million-pound houses, businesses having to be boarded up, houses having to be boarded up. Severe risk, I would say, at some point, of there being a stampede and people being trampled. Other people, however, might say, well, that's one thing, move it all you like, but actually there's still going to be all of the stabbings and crimes associated with this event. Mike, do you think the Notting Hill Carnival should just carry on year after year, as it does in Notting Hill, because it's part of, some sort of cultural heritage, or is it time we had a conversation?
I mean, clearly something's gone wrong. I mean, just looking at this piece of paper I'm looking at now, this report, 8 people were stabbed last year at the Notting Hill Carnival and 334 arrests were made. None of that is good, of course. And indeed, at least one of those people died, a 32-year-old mother. who was attacked with a zombie knife by a 20-year-old. So, I mean, clearly horrific. So it cannot continue in its current form. Something needs to change. I'm not close enough to know what that is. I don't know whether a change in location would help. I don't know whether restricting numbers, doing it over a longer period, greater police presence. I don't know, maybe doing it in a more open space, but then maybe that'll make it worse. I'm not an expert in crowd management, but clearly something needs to be different.
Yeah, my thought on this, and Simon, I don't know where you are on this, but my thought is you put it a venue like Hyde Park, like you would have a big weekend, Radio 1's big weekend, a ticketed event. So you can manage who comes in and who goes out. If you've got a ticketed event, you can then make sure people are walking through weapons detectors. You have it somewhere like Hyde Park, and all of a sudden you've got the ability to put up massive speakers, to have food stalls, I think it can actually make it a commercial event, make it even bigger and better, so it preserves it. To me, it improves it, and yet the organisers, time after time after time, insist it takes place on those streets.
Well, interesting. I've attended Notting Hill Carnival on 3 occasions. I've took my children to Notting Hill Carnival. I took my wife not last year, perhaps the year before, to Notting Hill Carnival, and we've had a thoroughly good time at it. And the very nature of it is that it's an informal get-together, is an understatement of gigantic proportions, but it brings people together in a very informal way, and it's not organised and it's not ticketed, and the food stalls aren't overly regulated and everything else, and that's some of its appeal. There are DJs that just set up and start playing music, but it is pretty crazy. I mean, unless you're a fairly robust guy or person, I wouldn't recommend going, and pick the time that you go, pick it right. I did when I took my kids. If you go on a certain day at a certain time, it's pretty safe. You wouldn't want to hang around late at night at the carnival. I wouldn't recommend that to people. So it's certainly dangerous, and we know that from the facts that you just read out, Mike. But I think a lot of the problem is about it being organised by amateurs. So I know the local authority and the police will have a strong role to play in it, but at the end of the day, I think it's a committee of people that come together on a regular basis. Perhaps there's money involved, I don't know, but it's not very well organised, and it could be so much better organised. So that's my view, just radically organise it in a better way.
But do you think it'd be fairer to move it out of a residential area, because businesses must lose so much money having to board up? And I feel desperately sorry for some of the local residents. My other half's mum lives in Notting Hill, and she has to just get out. She's a widow who lives by herself. She has to get out of Notting Hill because she feels really intimidated by it. And then other people, they have their Ring doorbells, which is, footage of all the people who come and use their front gardens and their little basement areas. It's disgusting.
And perhaps the compromise is that you give over Hyde Park and Kensington Park to a free festival that's not ticketed, that's very much open, and regulate it in that way, and because it's gigantic space. So perhaps that's the compromise.
It can still be ticketed, but with the tickets being free, so that way you have to sort of get an armband to go in, even if you don't pay.
I suspect the organisers would just that, and it's not Notting Hill Carnival anymore, it's something else. You've killed it.
But it can't go on as it is. I mean,
it can't go on as it is. I mean, not with this level of crime and not with this level of violence. I mean, the violence in particular. I mean, one death is one death too many.
And I think it's only a matter of time there's going to be a stampede. You look at the sort of throngs of crowds, people can't move, if they're, weather like today, for instance, if it was Notting Hill Carnival, you'd have people passing out from the booth in the hot sunshine, not being able to get to facilities, not being able to get access to water.
I mean, maybe they just need to restrain more heavily.
But if it's a public space, how can you? That's what I mean. You need a sort of closed off entrance and egress, don't you? You need a sort of ticketed event, even if the tickets are free, if you're going to control the numbers. So, I mean, I think the answer is very clear to see. All police officers hate police in that thing. They hate it. God, they all hate it.
That doesn't surprise
me. They dread it every time it comes around, year upon year.
So the ones that we see dancing aren't enjoying themselves, presumably, aren't they?
They're possibly having a great time, not the other ones.
We're ahead of schedule, guys. So let's. I'm going to jump onto a story here to take you by surprise. It may not be in your list, so sorry about that. You put down those papers, Mike. You're out of the safe zone now, my friend. No, this is about the fact that Palestine Action has been banned as a terrorist organisation. This is after the activists broke into RAF Brize Norton, spraying red paint into aircraft engines. And now it's been considered that these are potentially a terrorist organisation. One assumes that there has been a discovery that they are connected to foreign entities, maybe receiving foreign funding. Is that the right approach? And on the basis of this one organisation being branded a terrorist organisation, do we need to be asking questions about the pro-Palestine marches?
No, we don't need to ask questions about the pro-Palestine marches. I mean, as far as I know, they're people who are incredibly concerned about the ongoing violence in Palestine and the death of over 50,000 people, and I share their concerns, though I haven't been on one of the marches. I don't know anything about this particular group. Obviously, they've committed a criminal act. I suppose that therefore means that they can be deemed to be a terrorist organisation, although I don't know if that's actually terrorism or if it's just breaking and entering, but obviously that's not for me to determine. But the fact that this particular group has clearly done a very silly thing and has broken the law doesn't take away from the right arguments that the people who go on the marches are putting forward and seeking to influence policymakers.
Interesting. Where do you stand on this? Because, I mean, I've always been anti those marches, you know, good old Alex, ban everything. But I've been anti them because I think that they're a perfect opportunity for terror-backed organisations, the sort that Michael Gove made a list of, you know, the Mend and the Cage, saying, actually, these aren't sort of shiny, happy community leaders wanting the best for integration. They have connections to entities like the Muslim Brotherhood, who are quite dangerous and push an Islamist agenda. And I, for a long time, have thought those pro-Palestine marches are essentially used as a Hamas propaganda tool. Yes, there's plenty of people out there who are concerned about what's going on, who are concerned about the loss of life, understandably. But there's also, without doubt in my mind, an underbelly of people who do not have Western interests at heart, who could be using these marches as a recruitment exercise for their cause.
I mean, no doubt that will be the case. In terms of Palestine Action, I mean, they are clearly terrorists. I mean, these are people who are attacking, if I've got it right, British military facilities. I'm amazed that they managed to get that close to military equipment. In actual fact.
I'm amazed as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, sadly, they only harm their own cause.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know,
but the book should be thrown at them. I mean, they should be made an example of. It's all good and well making an example of Lucy Connolly for tweeting something stupid. But, you know, if anybody should be in prison, it's these people. These are very, very dangerous people. And if we let them get away with this in terms of a short sentence, then it sends a clear message to anybody else who supports that cause that they should take action themselves like that. And that's the last thing we want. We need to pull together as a country in terms of, you know, supporting the military. In terms of the Palestinian marches, I think there are far too many. I think they're intimidating. I think they're very bad news for the Jewish community in London. I think the Metropolitan Police have been seen to have failed around policing the Palestine marches, disproportionately favouring them and being sympathetic to their cause, but being unfair to those that have an opposing view. I think it's been wrong and poorly managed from start to finish, to be quite honest.
I mean, also a bit of an embarrassment for the Prime Minister, because it emerged that when he was a human rights barrister, he defended a protester who broke into an RAF base, set fire to an aircraft in protest at the Iraq War, and said on the basis of because they were trying to stop this aeroplane going to a war zone, they had every right to do what they did. So, I mean, you know, that's life, isn't it? Your past comes back
That's
to
the job
haunt
of a lawyer, though, isn't it?
And it's the job of,
take the next case that comes.
Some might say, now very quickly, because we haven't got long left, two big pieces of legislation in Parliament this last week, one on abortion, the other on assisted dying. I personally find it quite terrifying. Mike, is this a step in the right direction for progress, or do you also think, eek?
I have to say, on both counts, I'm gravely concerned, actually. Okay. I mean, I'm 100% against it. I'm one of those people, I'm against assisted dying in principle. I am also against it in terms of this bill, I think. But whatever your view on the principle, this bill is not fit for purpose. Pretty much every professional organisation, whether it's for disabled people or from the medical side or for elderly people, everybody is against this bill because there are no safeguards in there to protect the elderly, the vulnerable, the disabled. I genuinely think it's horrific. I'm shocked it passed in the Commons yesterday, given everything that we know, given everything that's come up at the committee stage. It's now gone to the Lords. I know the Lords are going to scrutinise it, and I hope, well, I'd like them to get rid of it, but if they don't, I don't know whether they can. But if they can't, I want them to put the safeguards in that all these professional bodies have been talked about. I actually know less about the changes to the abortion regime, but I'm very concerned about that as well, because it seems to basically make abortion right up to birth legal, which is staggering.
We've got less than a minute, so quickly, Simon, your views on this.
The Parliament of Death. I mean, this is what it will become known as. The idea that you can kill a unborn child up to the time that it's born is just crazy, and then the assisted dying is just very bad news. I don't think it. I think it'll end up having to be changed without doubt.
Yeah, well, Ghoul ghouls, the lot of them. Not ghouls here, though. Mike, Simon, it's been fantastic having your company. A very reasonably argued all around there. Brilliant to have such men of great standing and moral rectitude in the studio with me today. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now, and then it's the final hour of the programme. So don't go anywhere. Go put the kettle on. Maybe make yourself a piece of toast. Be careful not to burn it. I'd recommend Marmite, lots of vitamin B, and I'll see you on the other side of these commercials.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament. To respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Oh my gosh, Phil Dave, who has no hair, can I just say? He's got a shiny pate like a monk. Just said, you might want to sort your hair, love, in my ear. So there I was doing all of this, and I saw at the corner of my eye, I'd come on screen, so it looked like the beginning of an organics advert, you know? Oh, no, I'm not going to do that on radio. That's a terrible idea. Flippin' heck. Watch yourself, Alex. This is what happens when you get up at the crack of dawn and you've already been on air for 3 hours. You start going a little bit tonto. I'm in need of my eggs and bacon, I'll tell you that much. I am joined by Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday. What luminaries I have in the studio today. Political editor of The Sun on Sunday, the big boss of all the stories. And so let's kick off with what is in, OK, it might not be The Sun on Sunday, it is The Sun on Saturday. Same stable of talent, no doubt. Now, let's talk about what is in The Sun today, because the big story, incredible, can't believe what I'm reading. Actually, no, I can, that's the sad truth. The asylum hotels and the rape cover-ups. The Sun have done a brilliant job in digging out various cases where young men staying in these asylum hotels have committed the worst form of sexual crime, and there have been efforts to make sure that the public never know about it for the sake of maintaining community cohesion. Yeah, sadly, this is a kind of story that's becoming all too familiar to us. But this is a great story from Martina on the Daily. And this leads on a rape charge. This is a man who was staying in a migrant hotel in Portsmouth. He was accused and charged of rape, but she's found out that the council officers in that council covered up the fact that he was an asylum seeker because they were worried about inflaming community tensions. Now, sadly, we've seen this time and again, haven't we, where that concern that ill feeling might be fostered or community tensions could be sparked ends up, you see kind of information that would be that the public have a right to know about being covered up, and this is another example of that. We've got condemnation here from Robert Jenrick, who says there's a perception of a migrant cover-up, and Nigel Farage also has a go at it. But I think this raises serious concerns about the information the public is getting about people accused of crimes when there's a kind of real public interest in knowing about it.
Yeah, I mean, fascinating revelations in the Casey report, which is only a small, tiny, weeny little document compared to what a national inquiry may look like if it's given free rein to go where I believe it needs to go, although I'm very sceptical about whether the parameters of that particular investigation are going to be broad enough to bring in everyone, I think, who needs to be questioned. But you're right. I mean, this, in terms of the cover-ups, are the cover-ups worse, do you think, for community cohesions than actually if the public were given the truth? Or is the truth going to be that bad if we did have all those statistics? Like Baroness Casey said, in a lot of these situations where there are sex crimes, the ethnicity of the perpetrator is not recorded. And probably not recorded because, hey, we don't want to, because those statistics will then be far too eye-watering. I mean, is it a case that we need to rip off the Band-Aid, really know what's going on, or is that opening a Pandora's box of chaos?
Well, even if it opens a Pandora's box, you have to know what's going on. There's a duty among the authorities to tell us what's going on and be honest about it. I mean, you talk about the Casey report, which was obviously out earlier this week, that 200-page document about the grooming gang scandal. She says in that, you know, it's astonishing, really, how many police forces never recorded the ethnicity of the perpetrator. So the vast majority didn't record it because they were worried about inflaming community tensions. Even where it was recorded, it's often quite vague. So you say Asian rather than Pakistani men. It's only one police force, I think, that actually broke it down properly. But I mean, if there's something we've learned over the past few months, is that transparency is absolutely crucial, and actually you inflame community tensions when people think they're not being told the truth. That is where you get wild rumours flying around. That's where kind of untruth and rumour breeds off each other, and that is what sparks riots and community tensions. So this is just yet another example highlighting how important it is for the police forces and our councils to be honest with us about what's going on.
But is this changing culture, if we do start getting that empirical evidence, is this changing culture, like I said, going to basically constantly light a blue touch paper in a tinderbox? Because the British people are sitting here and they know that they've been gaslit, they know they've been lied to, they know the likelihood is that, you know, a certain proportion of crimes against women are going to be committed by foreign-born men because of the misogynistic cultures that they are from. And yet, when the public do get hold of information, even if it's false information, sometimes they do go, enough is enough. Governments haven't listened to us. We're deeply concerned about this. The ballot box isn't working anymore. Time for insurrection. And I get the impression that the security services in this country are now so fearful of that. They know the genie can't be put back in the bottle when it comes to wildly changing demographics. And so it seems to me the management is constantly on the side of, OK, well, this is a bad situation, so what we need to do is try and stop the native-born population kicking off.
Well, I just think that's kind of mad if that is their perspective, because I go back to the first point, you know, you have a duty to be honest about who's perpetrating what crimes. You also can't really effectively tackle crimes unless you're clear who's perpetrating them. So with the grooming scandals, you know, we've had so many people come through the courts with that, lots of individual inquiries. We obviously are now going to have this, finally have this national overarching one. But that, despite, 20 years of court cases, it's never been properly tackled, cracked down upon, because people weren't honest about who the perpetrators were and what it took to change those attitudes among those closed groups of people. So, you know, I don't think people are on the streets I don't think the insurrection is likely. I think that you can only tackle serious violent sexual crime if you're honest about the misogyny, the values, the kind of closed groups that perpetrate it.
No, I agree totally. I mean, all of these stories are really driving what must be a very exciting political era for you as a political editor. I saw polling from some sort of account called Stats for Lefties, so I'm not sure if that's sort of like, you know, I'm not sure if that's necessarily one of the sort of big five pollsters. But the polling was sort of suggesting now we've got to the stage that Reform could almost get a clean sweep in Parliament were a general election held tomorrow. I don't see this changing. Do you think that, you know, because unless all of a sudden people suddenly decide that any other version or imitation of Nigel Farage is better than the original, I can't see any other issue driving the debate in this country for a long time to come.
I mean, the rise of popularity of Reform, and Nigel Farage in particular, has obviously been astonishing. There were all these pundits saying that it was just a protest vote at the election. They would have peaked. Four or five MPs is the most they'll ever get. And now they're kind of romping in the lead in the polls. The fact is, public are incredibly fed up, and they have very low confidence in their politicians. So they kind of loathe the Tories. They don't think they did much at all with their time in office. And it's astonishing how quickly, after delivering Labour that kind of giant Blair-like landslide, that their confidence in Labour and Keir Starmer has also plummeted. So, you know, Nigel is the coming man, Reform are really popular, and but what the voters are telling us time and again is they want change, but they're just fed up and don't think anyone is enacting that change.
Right, and you know, I think if the big issue is open borders and the people being very distrustful of them, it's the issue that Nigel Farage is synonymous with.
That's
it's almost
true.
like any other person. It's just sort of a fake news Nigel, really. But you talk about Labour Party's massive majority. Some of the things they've chosen to do with that massive majority, I find, let's say, surprising. I'd rather use the word ghoulish and harrowing. They seem to be obsessed with killing people, assisted dying, abortion up until full term. I mean, I didn't get the impression anybody out there in the general public was massively pushing for either of those issues. And yet here they are at a point when our public services are on their knees, when you're waiting years and years to get an appointment with a mental health specialist, years and years to get your day in court, years and years to get a doctor's appointment, you know, cancer's being diagnosed far too late. You look at that entire situation and you suddenly throw in, oh yes, state-sanctioned killing into it. It just doesn't seem like the correct context to me. What on earth are Labour thinking by going for broke on these particular issues?
Yeah, so yesterday, just to recap, yesterday you have this kind of landmark vote by MPs where they vote very narrowly in favour of assisted dying. It's 23 votes. That's a very narrow margin in the House of Commons. It was a free vote, which means no one's whipped, so the party bosses don't tell you which way to vote. But you're right, I think most Labour MPs did vote for that, obviously. There's two criticisms of the assisted dying bill. Number one is that some people will never agree with assisted dying, and so it's a moral question for everyone. You know, do you morally agree with that or not? Should the state ever have that role? But you're right, there's another question, which is today's quite broken, kind of bungling state able, even if you think in a perfect world it could have that role, is it able to execute it well? I guess that's a poor choice of word, but you know, if you kind of can't get a hospital appointment, you don't trust your doctor to kind of x-ray the right foot or whatever, do you trust them with this end of life, literally, you know, do or die decision over what happens to you?
When there's, I think there's sort of such low trust in the state and our public services at the moment, and so giving them the ability to be arbiters of whether someone should live or die, the first time ever, really, that has happened when it comes to euthanasia. It just seems to be totally the wrong context.
And also, you know, there's going to be a huge upfront cost to this. No one's really spoken about this that much yet, but we're always told that the NHS is on its knees, it needs more money. It's just been given a massive cheque, but that was meant to be to improve current services, you know, clear those backlogs, get us in to see the doctor quicker. And obviously we've had a huge growth in the population, so doctors and nurses need to see more people, to go back to your borders point earlier. But now they are going to probably, if the Lords don't kind of throw it out, it looks like they're going to have to set up a whole new service with lots of checks and balances, train all of the medical staff. You know, that's going to cost loads and loads of money, and it's a huge new responsibility for the state. And there's a big question about, you know, the public may like this in theory when they're polled on it, but in practice,
do they have confidence in it, or are we going to start seeing, you know, if this is enacted, really tragic stories of bad decisions being taken at the end of people's lives?
Well, this is the big risk when it is life or death. You do sort of wonder when there's a single state. People go, well, that was a bad idea, wasn't it? Look what we've done now. And the abortion until full term. Where did that come from? Well, that to me is really creepy.
So this is decriminalising it so that the woman wouldn't be prosecuted. So we should say that doesn't change the kind of...
a doctor still cannot perform an abortion up until full term.
Exactly. It's not that you're really talking about women at a later stage of pregnancy going to do it. You're talking about if they do take that action, not being criminalised. But I think the interesting thing about both these bills is that they're private members' bills. So you're saying, what's the Labour government doing? You're seeing a lot of these big kind of changes in policy being driven by backbenchers, actually, rather than the government.
Yeah, no, I know. It's a very interesting one. I mean, for both, for me, for the assisted dying and the abortion, it is sort of, there have been these checks and balances, these guardrails on certain issues, which have been there, I think, out of necessity, and those have now been lifted up, and it's what happens now in the future going forward. So yes, it doesn't mean that you can actually legally go and abort a baby, because the practitioner who would do that after the set period of time, is it 23 weeks?
24 weeks, I think.
24 weeks would still be performing a criminal act. But it means the woman wouldn't be if she went. But then that to me makes it almost worse, because it's almost saying if you go to a backstreet baby butcher, you know, that's okay, you're not going to get into trouble.
I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I mean, like, these are kind of opinions and I guess your moral choice. But I think this is about not criminalising women if they're, you know, facing if they do think that it's about their own body, and it's incredibly rare. I mean, I think the thing that sparked that private members bill was the incidence of the lady who, in COVID lockdown, I think, took an abortion pill at home, and she was past the date, and she ended up being prosecuted. That was a court case of a couple of years ago. I think that's kind of what sparked it. But it's very important, I think, to say that with abortion cases, it's still those same checks and balances. You still need to be signed off by doctors. It still needs to be a kind of registered practitioner. It's about whether or not the woman is prosecuted, not whether or not that's legal.
I do worry, though, in certain circumstances, or maybe perhaps within certain communities now, if a woman, you know, can be urged to go and get rid of the baby, even if it's past certain time, and then there might be sort of, you know, underground operations that offer that particular service, that, you know, to me, you know, women are told don't drink wine when you're pregnant, but, you know, if you want to bump off your baby, that's fine. That to me seems just, it's more about what it could become. It's when those guardrails are taken off that I panic how things evolve in the future. Let's talk now about Palestine Action. They are to be banned as a terror group after they broke into RAF Brize Norton and vandalised 2 planes. Now, in my mind, that can't just be a knee-jerk reaction to that one particular activity. They must have known that this particular activist group had connections to some pretty dodgy foreign entities. That's my assumption, but I'd be right. You're nodding away there.
Well, I was going to say, Palestine Action, this is a group that's been kind of growing in public consciousness for about a year. They're basically this group of people who go and break into defence company factories, most recently Brize Norton, and they commit lots of criminal damage to try and attack our defence industry, you know, to stop all wars, whatever. But they've grown in the public consciousness. I think it was last year, Lord Wolney, who was one of the government's advisors on political violence, called for them to be proscribed. And they've massively ramped up their activism since those Hamas attacks. And to be honest, I think this has been a long time coming. I'm really surprised the Home Secretary is acting on Monday to prescribe it as a terror group. They're kind of like a nihilistic group who see it as their sole intent to go and attack defence kit. This is kit that is designed to keep this country safe. You know, those are planes designed to protect Britain. You know, we talk a lot, probably on this radio show, in our newspaper, about how Britain is facing more threats than at any point, probably since the height of the Cold War, maybe since the Second World War. We've got, you know, the Middle East, the tensions in the Middle East, war in the Middle East. You've got war in Europe, in Ukraine. The idea that you have a kind of violent activist group going and smashing up our own planes is ridiculous. So I think this will be like widely applauded across the political spectrum. Not a moment too soon. Some say she should have done it earlier. But clearly, with this attack, they
have done something which they hadn't done before, which is attack our own MOD,
infrastructure, yeah.
which is a bit different to like private defence companies, not excusing the other, but they've ramped it up. Now they're going to be prescribed. And I think I'd say something else as well. I follow them on Twitter, and they're always kind of applauding when judges and magistrates just give them a suspended sentence, or they get basically walk free from court. Well, hopefully this will mean they get tougher sentences now, because it will literally be a banned terror group.
Kate, thank you ever so much. That's Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday. You must have a lot of work to go and do now, right? You've got a paper to get off the presses. Right, OK, I'm going to be taking a short break now, but don't go anywhere, because coming up after the break, I'm going to be reuniting with my former television husband for some proper old misanthropy. Kevin O'Sullivan is with us after this.
You can't help it, right? Because I'm looking at that image, and through my mind, I'm playing the kind of Benny Hill theme.
But yeah, I know.
Because I know that the ridiculous cops are just out of the picture, and it's hilarious, you know.
Yeah, well, so what happened? This is the scene with our crutch guy that this is unfolded yesterday morning. He'd apparently previously tried to get on a boat the day before, but, you know, his disability got the best of him and he just couldn't quite make it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. Time flies when you're having fun. There's only 40 minutes to go. Thank you so much for your company on this glorious Saturday morning. This is called starting your weekend in the right way with some communal catharsis. And when it comes to getting on the nutter's couch, there's nobody else I'd rather share it with than the following guest, Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, talk presenter of the Political Asylum, quite where he belongs himself. Also one of my bezzers. Good morning, Kev.
Morning, Alex.
Now, apparently, the woke BBC strikes again because they're slapping various comedy shows, sort of in the sort of TV canon of Britain. The Office, Only Fools and Horses, are now getting trigger warnings for crying out loud.
Well, I tell you, I kind of gave up on these stories at the point when a trigger warning was slapped on Terry and June. Older viewers and listeners will remember that. The most harmless sitcom in the history of TV comedy, that's got a trigger warning on. Of course, you've got Fawlty Towers, you've got Father Ted, and now The Office. Basically, Alex, any program that was made in the past will get a trigger warning, because we, in this generation, have decided that we're the greatest people who have ever lived. And anything that was made before we existed was terrible and was sexist and was racist. And we have to warn ourselves about how wonderful we are, because those awful people in the past used to make these terrible, offensive comedies, and now we need to be protected and warned about it. It is pathetic. And, you know, they now have a system. So of course The Office has got a trigger warning, because every single program they show has to go through this system where they rate just how potentially offensive it could be. So The Office has got a G rating, which means adult humor. But as I say, it happens all the time. And to tell you how mad the trigger warning syndrome is now, we all know about theatres, particularly the Globe just around the corner from talkTV Towers. These theatres all slap trigger warnings on for Shakespeare. You know, Macbeth, warning, may feature death. You know, the Romeo and Juliet, warning, may feature sex. It's absurd. Now, where we reached critical mass with this, I read a story last week in the Telegraph. There's a museum in the north of England that has put a trigger warning on its trigger warnings. So in the, I am serious. So in the guidebook to the museum, there is a warning that you may find some of the trigger warnings traumatic. So there is a trigger warning about the trigger warnings. You see what I mean? It's absurd.
Madness. You know, I bang on this show. I keep saying communal catharsis, right? Because that's the sort of get together to vent. But the actual word catharsis comes from the Greek, and it was sort of representing this idea that in writing the great tragedies and the great myths and the legends and acting these things out was a way that the public could get together and basically sort of learn to process and handle things that are gnarly and awful and difficult in society. And comedy plays such an important role in that, being able to laugh at things in many respects and laugh at other people. It actually heals divisions rather than creates them.
Yeah, indeed. We don't need these warnings. We're adults. Kids don't even need these warnings, but adults definitely don't need them. It's a very, very odd kind of suffocating syndrome that we've imposed on ourselves. Everything has to be assessed. You know, will it offend? Will we get complaints and so on and so forth? But what you can rest assured, Alex, is if you get a trigger warning from, say, Only Fallen Horses, which of course have got one. So the trigger warning will say, warning contains humour from the past that some may find offensive. So what they mean there is that will be funny. It means the humour from the past is funny because nearly all of the comedy, well, I would say all of the comedies they make these days are so straitjacketed by their obsession with wokery and not being offensive that they're entirely unfunny. There should be trigger warnings on today's comedy saying, warning, not funny.
Well, no, exactly. It should be like, yeah, trigger warning. This, you know, this comedy series is brought to you by a BBC executive who's going to use it as some sort of social psyop. That's the problem these days. You know, Doctor Who's got to be trans or woman or, you know, all the rest of it. Everything's got to be forcing this top-down activism down your throat. You've got to support all of these causes or you're a bad person. Little kids have got to be brainwashed into questioning their gender. That's the stuff that needs to have some sort of certificate on. Go, don't watch this. It could harm your health.
Yes, well, exactly right. And you know, people say, "Oh, well, there are topics, subjects you mustn't make jokes about." No, there aren't. If you understand comedy, if you understand humour, you can make a joke, or we should be able to make a joke about absolutely anything. And usually, the most daring topic that you dare to make a joke about will be the funniest joke that you make. So these people, the trigger warning set, don't understand that. You know, oh, you can't make a joke, you can't do that. No. All of our great comedies in the past actually sort of trod on kind of quite sensitive territory, and they didn't mind. They tested the boundaries. And now we look at those brilliant comedies that tested the boundaries, that didn't mind what they made jokes about stuff that we were stunned by, but we found funny. Now, the trigger warning people look back at that and say, that's a disgrace. That's a disgrace. We've got to put a warning on that, and we must never do this again. Don't forget, they're not only trigger warning, some of these episodes are being junked, never to be seen again because they're so heinous. Honestly, we have become a bunch of puritanical prigs. We've gone backwards in terms of our forwardness.
And yet we talk about, you know, The Office and Only Fools and Horses being slammed with a warning, and at the same time we find out that Netflix, in the process of making a 2-part drama all about Southport and the subsequent riots, and you think, look, I'm going to admit it, when that thing comes up online, I'm probably going to watch it. But at the same time, you think, well, two things. First of all, is this not a little bit too soon after the event? And then the second thing I worry about is this a bit like that adolescence thing going to be used as some sort of psyop by trying to convince us all we're monstrous for having any concerns about asylum seekers committing crimes?
You know what's interesting about adolescence? You remember that Keir Starmer said
the documentary.
Every school. You know, one of the writers was on Question Time the other day, and they were Fiona Bridge, adolescents should have shone a light on this terrible scourge of young kids, being converted on dark web, and white kids, and the toxic masculine, and Starmer had declared this to be a national scourge. All schools.
Wanted it rolled out of that cupboard. Mrs. McGee pulling out the telly to watch that for a lesson.
The point is, it's not a national scourge, and the writer said so. He said, "Oh, it's very rare." So we see this stuff on TV, and we kind of lionize it and venerate it. Oh, it's been on TV. It must be a terrible syndrome. Well, it's not. So. The Southport drama, I mean, what I always feel about this kind of stuff, I'm a sort of libertarian. Yeah, I think people should be able to make programs and comedies about anything they want. If people find it offensive, I don't care. If I find it offensive, so what? They should still be able to make it. The Southport drama, a lot of people will say it's too soon. I tend to agree with you. It probably is, but I don't think they should be stopped from doing this series. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if you want to see something that will be enmeshed in trigger warnings and sort of disclaimers, you wait till that Southport thing.
I just worry. You know how it's going to be framed, isn't it? You already know that, it's going to sort of portray some horrible, gnarly, white working class man who does nothing, beats up his wife, chucks lager cans about the place. Meanwhile, there's a sort of, there'll be some poor, lovely woman from Hamas with her 2 babies around her, cuddling them in the hotel, going, "Don't be scared, children. We came here for a better life." It's going to be a psyop, isn't it? Let's be fair. You just know it.
It will be.
They ain't going to miss that trick.
A lot of people will say too soon, but I don't think you should stand in the way of TV producers or play directors. If they want to do this, let them do it.
Aye, well, if only that sort of freedom was accorded to both sides of the political debate when it comes to the making of creative content.
Yeah.
Kev, thank you ever so much. Always good to see you so bright and early in the morning. In fact, it's not that early. This is the time that Kev and I used to go on air back in the olden days. We were in those studios downstairs and we did our little half-an-hour rant-a-thon, Kev and Alex. I miss those days. But it's nice to be here anyway. Now, listen, before we go to break, it is competition time here at Talk. We're giving you the chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets, not just anywhere. Oh, no, for their big one, which takes place in Manchester. That's right, on July the 19th. We're also going to put you up in a hotel and give you $5,000 to spend on what looks like it's going to be the biggest bender of your life if you spend all of that in one night. Here's everything you need to know and how to enter.
All right, kid. You have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and $5,000 spending money, all you got to do is text the word WIN to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, P.O. Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, as we start to turn the final corner for the final lap of this 4-hour show, because we come off air, well, I come off air. There is Peter Cardwell after me, of course, but I come off air at 10 o'clock today. 3.5 hours has just flown by. I really like this show. It's nice. And you know, I didn't think I was a morning person, right? I'm going to share something with you. I never thought I was a morning person. I hate getting up early in the morning. At least that's what I told myself. Except I used to have this problem of going to bed, sleeping till about 3, 4 in the morning, waking up and not being able to go back to sleep. So I was like, oh, that's why when the alarm, you know, I'm struggling to go back to sleep when the alarm does go off at a more reasonable hour. I'm like, no, damn you. But for this show, you actually have to go to bed stupidly early. So last night I found myself with my eye mask on, my blinds down, tucked up listening to my podcast at 8 o'clock last night. Got up again a little bit at 9 o'clock, wasn't quite ready, and I had a little bit of a nappy type moment, that sort of sinking yourself into the zone of sleep, and then got up and made myself a cheeky little cocoa and went back to sleep, and I managed to go to sleep quite fine. Then when my alarm went off at 3:30, I was like, get in. I wake up this time anyway, and now I'm going to get up. And I've realised I've spent my whole life labouring under the false illusion that I wasn't a morning person. No, I didn't realise that I was such a morning person that 3 a.m. is perfect for me. It's brilliant. You wake up and you're like, ooh, look at London. No one's going to stab me because there's no one on the streets. Yay. And the sun's coming up over Westminster Bridge. Everything looks idyllic. It's so peaceful and calm out there. I can get from West London to East London in 20 minutes by car at that time in the morning, by car. It's like, wow, everything's so stress-free because there's nobody else in this city. They're all tucked up in their beds. It's the most enjoyable, appreciation of London I've had in a very long time. And then you finish and it's like, oh, what am I going to do with my day? I know, I'm going to go and sunbathe, so I'm not moaning. Turns out I'm good at breakfast, aren't I? Yeah, I quite like it. Suits my weird little body clock, it does. Right. Anyway, listen, if you want to get in touch about anything we've been talking about today, once we've spoken to the glorious Rupert Bell, who's going to be telling us all about Ascot, it's going to be your opportunity to have a gin wag for the final chunk of the programme. So please do get in touch. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. It's your normal network rate. I'd love to speak to you. If you're the one sitting there going, I've never called her before. In fact, I've never called the radio before. Ooh, it's a bit weird. She's like, do it, go on, it's just me. What do you think I'm going to do? Huh? It'd be nice. We're mates. I thought we were friends. What? I thought we were. Oh, come on. Anyway, if you're a little bit too coy to make that phone call, you can leave me a voice note or send me a WhatsApp message on that same number. I've actually got loads of messages to get through. Or 87222 if you'd like to send me a text. And if you're going to send me a text, write the word talk before your message. But it'd be great to have an actual chat with some of you on the phone. So register your interest now. Lovely Tommy is there waiting to take your call, and he will even give you a call back when the time is right. You can't get better service than that. OK, right, now let's go to Rupert Bell, who's Talk's royal correspondent, but also a horse racing aficionado. How's your bins on there, Rup? Looking very sophisticated. Put them back on. I quite liked that look on you. It was nice. Anyway.
How's that? I need them to read.
Yeah, I think that's
card.
good. That's like, you know, I'm actually going to trust your betting predictions if you wear those glasses. If you take them off, I'm going to decide they will bunkum.
Well, I think most people know they're bunkum, so don't worry about it, glasses or not. So that tends to be the order of the day with my tips. And actually this week I've had an absolute shocker.
Oh, really? Well, come on, get it right for the weekend, won't you? Now, tell us.
Yeah.
It's all about Royal Ascot. So first of all, let's start with the nays, and then you can tell me all about the glitz and the glamour and the royals and the celebs.
Well, from the Gigi's point of view, fantastic. This meeting brings horses from all around the world. There is something uniquely British about this occasion. It is a very special 5 days of equine and social entertainment. That's the part of what makes it so good. Yet, you know, people come here for the tradition. Now, we've seen some great performances earlier in the week. Field of Gold, I think we have a new equine superstar on the block after that performance. And we've seen the emergence of a new young trainer in Harry Eustace with 2 Group 1 winners at the highest level. That is an amazing achievement. And today we've got a race over 6 furlongs, which is Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes, where we might have a Japanese winner, which would be fantastic for the race. Because one of the things is, British race may have all the tradition, but it doesn't have the prize money. It's only £10 million worth of prize money. You say only £10 million worth of prize money up for grabs over the 5 days. Yet you can run for a race in the Middle East for 10 million, equivalent race of R340 today, 10 million. So it just shows you we are floundering when it comes to prize money, but we're not floundering when it comes to tradition.
I've got a question for you, because you're a man who doesn't just know about the GGs. I think you know more than most about the GGs. You talked about horses coming from all around the world. How on earth do they... I mean, obviously they get there via aeroplane. They don't sort of grow wings like Pegasus and fly. But I've never seen anyone sort of like, you know, load a horse onto the back of a BA flight. How does that work?
Well, they have special planes. I mean, they will be flown in and they get treatment in cargo planes, but they've got stabling. I mean, it is 5-star. It's first-class travel. It really is. No, it's a well-oiled machine in terms of flying horses around the world. I was recently in Shanghai, where they had 2 cargo loads full of horses flying from the Netherlands. 300 horses were flown out to China. You know, so it's more than easy to get horses around the world. It used to be really difficult, but the world has shrunk as far as horse transport is concerned, and that's why you have to. They get jet lag as well.
Do they not go tonto as the plane's taking off? Are they not like rah?
No. Well, obviously you do. You know,
I'm an okay flyer, me, but
no, because you know, look, they've always got people with them. They're not just left. You know, will be grooms traveling in the cargo hold. You know, it is. You can find videos of it of how horses are flown around the world, and it is. You know, they are treated extremely well wherever they go. So
I know what I'm going to do while sunbathing. I'm going to go exactly down that wormhole. I'm going to find videos on horses and aeroplanes. That's a great way to spend my afternoon.
I think you probably got better things to do than that, Alex. But
you'd be surprised, Rupert. You'd be surprised.
Okay, well, get your cup of cocoa, go to bed at 8 o'clock. I now know your weekends are complete. There's no social life for you at the weekends.
I'm a cool kid. Yeah. I'm a cool kid, Rupert. I'm a party girl through and through, except the party's gone by 6 p.m. Now, talking about partying, Ascot always draws a glamorous crowd, doesn't it? And do you know what one of my favourite traditions of the newspaper year is? It's the day after something like Ascot or Epsom or New Year's Eve, but that's not about horse racing, where the tabloids have all of the pictures, the gallery of shame of all the women who got wasted in their stilettos, of like, you know, slumped against a bin with a bottle of Prosecco. I love that day. That's one of my favourite newspaper spreads. But anyway, less of that. Tell me about celebs and royals.
Well, obviously the royal procession is part of the uniqueness of this meeting, and fair play to the king. You know, it's been sweltering here. He's 77. He's going to do 5 days of this. And in the royal procession, we saw the Prince of Wales once. We didn't see the Princess of Wales. There was a bit of a mess up probably with the administration of this, because it was announced on Wednesday at 12 o'clock that she was going to be in the royal procession. At 12:18, there's sort of minions running around in a bit of a panic going, no, she's not coming. No. She was disappointed. Earlier in the last week, she was at Trooping the Colour. Then she'd been at the Garter ceremony, and then obviously managing her recovery, didn't want to be here. And in what was 30 degrees temperatures and everything. So that was probably disappointing, because she does create a huge level of interest when she is at this meeting. But we weren't short of celebrities. You know, we've seen J.K. Rowling put her head above the Royal Ascot parapet. She always seems to be in the news, but she was looking like she was having a lovely day yesterday with Neil Murray, her husband, and various other. Nigel Havers was here. We've seen Brian O'Driscoll from the world of rugby. Justin Rose, if you know, Ryder Cup golfer and one of our finest golfers, he was in the royal procession. It's a real treat to get that gig. Luckily, my brother did do it once, because he used to train for the late Queen, and he said it was just one of the most memorable days of his life. And then you come down in that procession, which is 200 years old. It is a really special feeling. Although I have to say, Alex, you get there at about 12:30, you have to eat your lunch pretty quickly. So it's a fantastic part of what it is, and it always looks timeless. You know, if you look at it where it does now, and then you suddenly did a bit of AI and moved it into the 1890s, you wouldn't barely notice anything different about the royal procession.
Oh, that's splendid, isn't it? I mean, the Queen loved, didn't she? She loved her horse racing. I think someone once told me Sandown might have been her favourite racing circuit. I don't know, racing track. So I'm a Formula One circuit.
No, I
just
think
popped in my head.
Oh, I think a racetrack. We'll get you right. You'll get the terminology right, Alex. But no, the Queen Mother, the late Queen Mother, she loved Sandown. She was probably more of a jump racing enthusiast. That's Cheltenham, the Grand National.
Right.
Whereas the Queen loved this place.
What
like
about Charles,
nowhere.
though? Is he into the GGs much? I mean, he's sort of there at the Royal Parade, but is he actually sort of a fan of it?
He is. He's owned a Royal winner about 2 years ago. Yes, he is. People were saying, is he interested? That win sort of helped to ignite his passion. Look, he's never going to match the late Queen's enthusiasm for it. But the current Queen, she loves it. She comes from a very horsey background. So it's not, look, he's never going to reach his mother's level of passion, but he's committed to the cause. He owns horses. He's had some runners here this week. Sadly, they haven't quite done what Desert Hero did 2 years ago. They've flattered to deceive in races, but the King is definitely a passionate about this meeting. He's passionate about racing. He's ridden in races when he was a young man, jump races. So it's not a total...
Of course, he's a polo player as well, wasn't he? So he's definitely,
Horses are a part of his life. He knows how to... Horses are part of his life. I mean, one of the things is, if you're in the royal family, you've got to learn to ride, because you've probably got to do the trooping, the colour, or other things. So, you know, George is probably having riding lessons around the Windsor Great Park, not necessarily as we speak, but he will be expected to know how to control a horse, because he will be expected to take part in parades in due course.
Lucky little scamp. That's all I wanted as a little girl growing up. I just wanted a horse one day. And if I had a racehorse of my own, I'd call it communal catharsis. Thank you ever so much to Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent and horse racing aficionado. Right. We're going to take a short break now. And the exciting thing after the break is it's your opportunity to get in touch. 03444991000. This is it. Roll up, because the fair is about to shut. Well, it's not, because Peter Cardwell's coming up, but certainly the Phillips Fair is about to come to its conclusion this Saturday. Hopefully be speaking to some of you after this.
The lesson that I take from my experience in this is that keeping people informed accurately and in a timely way is absolutely key, and that includes members of Parliament. I've been contacted by people that I've worked with, professional colleagues and constituents who are currently stuck in Israel. And the thing that comes across over and over again is that they're getting conflicting advice. They're being told to move to Egypt or Jordan, while simultaneously being told to stay put.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, you know when it's coming up to the final 10 minutes of the show, because I'm stealing all the cryptic crosswords from all the newspapers so I can go sit in my garden and do them later to ward off the dementia. Right, let's hit up the phone lines now and speak to Alan, who is in Doncaster. Hi there, Alan.
Good morning, Alex, and what a wonderful, bouncy, lively show on this wonderful summer's day.
Oh, you sound very positive.
I'd like to speak about Palestine Action and how they're being prescribed as a terrorist group. what a good move. But I've got one even better for you.
Yeah?
If we need to stop any further such actions, then they've just attacked this state's ability to defend itself. And therefore, in my humble opinion, they're guilty of treason. And we should not allow anyone to destroy or limit our ability to defend ourselves. And that's exactly what they've done. It's treason from a supposedly British member of our country.
No, I agree entirely. We've gone too soft on everything in this country, haven't we? Too soft on these activists, too soft on pro-Palestine marches, too soft on people breaking into the country illegally, too soft on people who are already in this country who've committed heinous crimes and should be deported. And it's all very well being very sort of laissez-faire and softly when you live in a high-trust society where you've got community cohesion, where everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet, where everybody knows their neighbour and shares the pot of sugar and speaks the same language. It's all OK being softly. Then, when you start messing with that system and start to pull at the fabric of society and make it tear at the seams by introducing swathes of people from foreign cultures into our land and then go, yeah, we're still going to be softly, guess what? It goes wrong. And I love your idea, Alan. Charge him for treason. Absolutely. Fantastic call. Thank you ever so much. Let's speak to Ricky, who's in London. Hi there, Ricky.
Good morning, Alex.
Do you know what? For 1 minute there, I was thinking, is that Ricky, the big boss? But no, it's not. I can tell by the voice. Hello there, what do you want to talk about?
It's the little boss.
It's the little boss, is that what you are? All right then, fair enough. All right, boss, tug my forelock.
Well, what do we know? Right, the migrants that are coming over on the boats, what do we know about the customs checks? Normally at airports, you have all the sophisticated equipment to check for heroin and everything else. What do we know? Can you imagine these drugs cartels saying to these migrants, if one of them were to bring over like a pound of heroin or something like that, they would be made for life, wouldn't they?
Right.
And is it all connected with all the Turkish barbers, shops and the money laundering businesses? What do we know? Imagine being a migrant coming over. I mean, how easy is it to get away with heroin or whatever in your shoes without all those? Normally, as I say, at airports, you've got all the sophisticated equipment. They've got to be using that as a route, haven't they? They've got to be.
At the very least, Ricky, I can tell you this much. At the very least, some of these men who are being shipped across come to work on the black market. They're being shipped into the country to be the people selling the drugs or growing the cannabis. That's point one. Point two is the fact that I've heard on good authority that in some instances they're dropping packages over the sides of the dinghies with little GPS trackers. So under the cover of darkness, the boats can come out, track where these packages are and bring that cash into the United Kingdom. We're not just talking about drugs, we're talking about lethal weapons as well. That is what I have heard, which is extremely terrifying.
It's got to be rife, hasn't it? It's got to be so, because I know how stupidly soft we are.
Right.
It's got to be rife. Imagine it, if someone said to you as a migrant, here's a couple of pounds of heroin. If you can get to England, not only have you got a wonderful life ahead, you'll be rich effectively.
But then the thing is this, that even if none of those things were happening, the very people organising the trafficking are connected to massive international cartels and terrorist organisations. So you're funding the wrong uns anyway. It's just, I mean, this is an issue of national security, and yet
it's insane. It's insane.
I know.
It's insane.
I know, Ricky, mate.
Honestly, the numbers that are coming over, because you watch these YouTube videos, Charlie Beach and all that, all these migrants, all they are vagrants. They end up as vagrants in our high streets, and literally it's coming to every high street, in every town, in every village. All you're going to see are vagrants, because they will never, ever amount to anything. So literally our country is being destroyed by the day with these sheer insane numbers, Alex. We are in real big trouble, and with another 3 years of this, God help us. God help us. Honestly, this is so crazy. I'm sorry.
I don't get it. No, it is. And most of the general public, I'm just looking at my messages while listening to you there, and most of the general public totally agree. They're despairing right now. They really are at their wits' end.
Honestly.
Oh, Ricky, that's why you've got to get together with me every Saturday and Sunday for some breakfast time communal catharsis.
There we go. I scared him off with that, didn't I? All right. Maybe it's a little bit too much communal catharsis for Ricky. He's gone to sort of have a lie down somewhere. Let's read some of your messages today. Lisa says, I'm hilarious today. Keep it up. I don't know. What's so funny about talking about grooming gangs? I mean, I don't try to be funny. I'm just a bit weird. How long before Terry and June, the sitcom, is only watchable on the dark web? Alex, keep up the ranting. 100% with you on that. That's from JB in Aberdeenshire. OK, so I know what I got to do next week. I know what I got to do tomorrow. Keep up the ranting. Someone said that PMQ should get a trigger warning as a fantasy programme. There you are. Couldn't agree more. Ian in Scotland says, Alex, what a fantastic show today. I've listened from 6 a.m. Thank you, Ian. Well done. Are you still there if you had to go for a lie down as well? Wouldn't blame you if you did. Why don't we all grow up and admit what we know to be true? Liberalism has gone way, way too far. And why don't the so-called politicians stop digging and making everything worse? Life in this country has now become a sick, repulsive joke. That is from Michael. Alex, Palestine action should be banned. I'm not a fan of any Palestinian marches. They all need a history lesson. Anyone in those marches with Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran should be arrested. I'm sure if I marched for Black September and the PLO in the 70s, I would have been arrested. That's from Howard. Other countries have banned those pro-Palestine marches and on good authority that they represented a security breach. And I know full well that our counter-terrorism czar said much the same to this government and said, you do realise some pretty unsavoury organisations are corralling public support via the medium of those marches. And yet, do they do anything? No. Because they're too scared of offending people. Alex, the view of the assisted dying bill is wrong. It's not giving that power to the states, but giving it to the individual. Look, I get that, Stuart. I understand that it is about the individual making their own decision, but it is a change of what the state legalises and doesn't legalise, and it is up to members representing the state, whether it be psychologists, doctors, judiciary, who will make the final decision. Abortion up to full term, I can't believe that got through. 40 weeks. They'd be locked up for that. Surely it's not full term. No, it pretty much is all the way through till full term. And I just got a message, actually, a text from Dr. Rennie Hunderkamp, who said much what I believe in, which is this is going to give a green card to people who essentially want to bully and coerce women into terminating their pregnancies, going to the black market. I mean, it's just there needs to be guardrails in legislation, and I just think this is the wrong approach. All they need to do now, says Dee in Tunbridge Wells, is bring back hanging and they'll have the hat trick. Definitely the Parliament of Death. Well, do you know what? If they did that, the problem is that's killing the bad guys, whereas this Parliament seems to only want to harm the good guys and protect the bad guys. The superior culture and woke attitudes of our useless police chiefs have been a major contribution to the breakdown of our society, and no doubt will be a major factor at the demos in London today. Someone says, Alan in Merseyside, thank God for Alex, a real woman of passion. She brought tears to my eyes, saying what most people think. At which point? Which point of my shouting and ranting and raving and lunacy this morning did that? Women's safety, there you go. Well, like I said, I got skin in the game on this one. I'm fed up. I've run out of patience with this. I'm just going to rant and rave until I see change, because I feel like that's what I'm on planet Earth to do. What are you on planet Earth to do, Peter?
What am I on planet Earth to do?
Yeah.
Probably drink Diet Coke. I don't know. I'm not really sure. It was quite funny, actually, because there was some Twitter discussion earlier and someone just went, who is Peter Cardwell? And I retweeted it and went, who is Peter Cardwell? I've often asked myself that question. What is the reason to be? And I think the reason to be is just to chat on talk and drink Diet Coke. I think
you've
that's it.
become a bit of a sort of a social media celeb, or sort of a part of Twittergate.
Don't even start me.
Kitchengate, because you interviewed a woman at the same time. No, there was a woman who was interviewed, and then Keir Starmer was interviewed in the same kitchen. Everyone's saying the woman's an actress.
She's not.
Everyone's turned into sort of like internet sleuth about this, and you're like, I did the interview.
The only problem is she's not an actress. That's the only issue is the picture that someone put online of her being an actress is a totally different person. She's not an actress. She's a mother of three. Was in her kitchen. She very kindly opened her home to Keir Starmer. I was told to go and interview him there. Did that. End of story.
I know, I love it. Everyone's become an internet sleuth around this one.
Yeah, except there's nothing to sleuth.
No, nothing to sleuth over at all.
Really
I don't trust this government as far as I could throw them, but I still would actually imagine they've got more than a grain of common sense not to just randomly use an actress.
I would love it to have been a set in London. That would have been great. I wouldn't have had to go to Staffordshire, which was a 200.
What's wrong with the beautiful Midlands? Get out of the
Midlands is great.
M25.
Getting back in time to present Drive on Thursday was the issue. I had
There
9
you are.
minutes left before I got in, so tricky
now,
enough.
you've got about a good minute to tell us what you're covering today.
Well, we're talking to Wendy Morton, the Shadow Foreign Office Minister, in a second. Just after the news, we're going to talk about Iran and Israel and the US. Also, this Bryce Norton break-in. How on earth was it allowed to happen? How did it happen? Surely this is one of the most secure places in the country.
You would hope.
Apparently not. Also, those protesters attacked outside the Iranian embassy in London, and the fact that Starmer defended one of the protesters who allegedly sabotaged the military aircraft.
I know, sometimes it's the awkward bits from his history as a barrister come
You're
to
absolutely
light.
right. Also, the welfare debate is coming up. We've had huge change on abortion, on assisted dying. Welfare is the next one. A dozen ministers could possibly resign.
Wow.
We'll be talking as
dozen.
well.